All right, all right. Welcome everybody. I am doing yet another stream. I've been doing a lot of these lately. Just so many streams. I have another video coming out soon on moral luck, so you can check that out. And today, I was just inspired. Someone commented saying, "Hey, I want you to check out this person's videos," and I did. And hopefully, we'll get to have a conversation and talk about this because, I really like the channel. I started watching it. It's Philosophiculist. So I started watching the content, and this guy's is funny. I like the humor and the style and the approach. So I am going to be very critical of the arguments that he presents in the video, but I say that in spite of the fact that I really like the video, and the guy seems really cool. So it's cool. It's cool to see people on here. I don't know how long this channel has been around, but I like to see more people in the philosophy space on YouTube doing stuff that I like, even if I disagree with them. Although I don't mind agreeing with people. So, the moral luck video. Why is this so crooked? It looks like I'm sitting. I don't feel like I'm crooked, but that bookshelf is real crooked, isn't it? What is going on here? I'm gonna have to figure this out. Anyway, so hopefully we get more and more people in the online YouTube philosophy space, and people over. By the way, yeah. Anyway, more people on YouTube philosophy, more of that. Yeah. Uh, but Substack is just booming. It just when I started on there was a couple years ago now. It seemed pretty quiet, and I guess since they introduced the notes thing, notes kind of works a little bit like Twitter. I guess you could write a lot longer notes though. It really just seems to be booming over there, and just more and more people have joined Substack, and it seems to be really successful in bringing people together to talk about stuff. So go check out Substack if you haven't already. I always have a link to, like, I have a link tree. So I don't know if you know what link tree is, but it's like a place where you could just put all your links to your other stuff. So you could go to my link tree, and then you can see I got links to everywhere else that I'm at. So you can see me in all those places. And you could go check me out over on Substack if you don't if you don't already subscribe over there and everything. So it's interesting because the people on Substack, I've even encountered people I had conversations and they're like, you should do YouTube videos, and I was like, you know, I already do. So sometimes people in the different communities don't really interact with or talk to one another. So kind of cool. All right. Anyway, let me get to the Lance loot, and then we'll get into this video. All right. So we've got Zictomorph. Hey, that's 1,000 Lance loot for you. LPQ Silver, that's 500 for you. And Mason gets 250. Actually, you're going to get 300 because you got the picture of Jupiter. And Jupiter is cool. I like Jupiter. Um, I used to be really into astronomy. Not that into it. I was a little bit into it. And yeah, I always thought astronomy is cool. And I didn't do anything with that. I used to really be into books about aliens, but then I just got into like the moon. Like I always thought moons are cool. Moons are not appreciated enough. People always talk about planets, but what about all the moons? There's so many of them. So let me see if I could remember the 4 Galilean moons: Io, Ganymede, Callisto, and Europa. Is that right? I think that's them. I think so. I'm pretty confident. I think I'm 80% confident about that. So Mason, you could let me know if I got them right. Uh, we need Lance Independent shirts. I had my wife got me one shirt, and it ended up the people that made it was like, it's pre-shrunk. It's pre-shrunk. We washed that one time. I wore it once, and you have some pictures of me wearing it, and then it shrunk to this little tiny baby shirt that she could wear that I cannot wear. So I'm gonna have to try to find one that I'm happy with, because I don't like shirts that are not pre. I don't like when my shirts shrink. So I do have the design for the shirt with the Lance Independent symbol, and I don't know if I showed on the channel before the shirt designs that I came up with. So I came up with some. Other people have proposed shirt design ideas. Stuff like that's an empirical question. That's probably the thing I say the most. But stuff about gastronomic realism. So I have a few shirt designs. I created them in Canva, and I got the channel's got to be bigger before I start printing out shirts and stuff for mugs and stuff like that. Last year I was all excited at the start of the year. I'm like, I'm going to make a store. I'm going to do it, and it ended up looking like it was a lot of work. and we're just gonna need more people on this channel. My goal actually last year, because I had these like New Year's resolutions. So the first year it was to hit 1,000 subscribers, and I didn't make that goal. I was at like 900 something by the end of 2022, and or was it no the end of 2023? Yeah, and end of 2023. And I passed 1,000 a little bit after, so I counted that as a win. I thought it was close enough. But the following year, I thought I could double it. I could hit 3,000, and I did not. I only got 700 subscribers or so by the end of the year. I'm about to get a 1.8 probably in the next day or two. Maybe I'm already there. I don't know. Let me check. Let's see. Am I at 1.8? I did hit 100,000 views though. That was pretty cool. So that was nice. But the channel, really didn't grow as much as I expected it to. Nope, I'm still at 1.79. What's the exact number? I have to go and check. YouTube Studio, let's see. 1796. So I'm 4 off of 1800. So the shirts will come around. Maybe we'll say when I hit 5,000 subscribers, I'll start a store. How does that sound? I don't know. Don't I'm not going to make a promise, but it seems like a reasonable arbitrary threshold. We got Carlos here. How's it going? Super Critical Snake. What's up? Mason says agreed on moons, but you didn't confirm whether I got him right. I'm tempted to go look it up, but it's not worth it. See, this is so it feels like if you're so in astronomy, then tell me about type 1A supernova and how they're used as standard candles for measuring distances, etc. You know what? I did take astronomy courses. Was it 1 or 2? I don't remember how many. I already forgot. But that I think that the whole candle thing is actually something that we went over in that class. It was actually a really cool class, and we got to look at all kinds. So there was lots of like telescope work. I think I did an astronomy lab too. Um, can't remember anymore. It was so long ago. It was over 20 years ago. Uh, wow, it feels weird to say that it was that long ago. 22 years ago, something like that. And anyway, those classes are awesome. The professor, I think, was a mathematician, and I don't know, half, 2/3 of the class was a bunch of math related stuff, and it was not that easy. And I really loved it. I loved math in that context. Putting it in a context where it was something I really liked and thought was interesting and cool. But it's just a couple courses. My first college course was anthropology, which I also love, but I don't know anything about anthropology. I don't remember that course. Okay, so I'll tell you about that course first. So first of all, that course, that professor, it was my first college course. To this day, still one of the best professors I've ever had in any course in any university. She was absolutely incredible. We didn't use a textbook. She just taught and you took notes from the lectures, and they were detailed and they were rich and they were interesting, and it was like intro to anthropology. So he covered everything. And I think she mostly did cultural anthropology, but when she got to like the physical anthropology stuff and human evolution, she was no slouch. She brought in like the skulls of all the different hominids, I don't know, whatever the fake versions of them are. They weren't real skulls. Passed them around the class, and it was a super hands-on thing. Oh, that was such a cool class. It was awesome. Loved it. But the astronomy classes, yeah, there was a lot of math, but I got a great lesson in the astronomy class. So what happened was we had an assignment. It was like a worksheet where you had to do the math and then write your answer in little boxes. So it was like question 1, a box at the end. Question 2, a box at the end. So for whatever reason, I wrote for question 1, I wrote my answer not in the question number 1 box, but right above it on the first empty line. And then for question 2, I wrote it in the box for question number 1. For question 3, in box number 2, and so on. So I don't know if I had all the correct answers, but I think I when I looked over it, I think that I did pretty well. But they weren't in the right boxes, and he gave me a 0. Like he marked every single question wrong. And you might think that's messed up. Clearly, there was just a misunderstanding with where they were aligned. And so I don't remember exactly how I reacted. I don't think I was happy at the time. I think I was like, that's not fair. I got mostly right answers. You should have marked this, whatever I would have got, a 92, whatever it would have been. You should have given me points for this. And he said, putting stuff in the wrong box matters. I can't remember exactly what he said, but I think the gist of it was, look, if you were if you were designing like a space probe or something and you put the numbers in the wrong box, it doesn't matter if they were the right numbers. If they were in the right boxes, you put them in the wrong box, so that probe's going to crash. I don't think he said exactly that, but the idea was where you put the numbers matters. And but the takeaway, and I do remember him saying this. He goes, "I don't. You're never going to forget this, are you? And you're not going to make that same mistake again." Uh, and I never forgot it, and I don't think I made that mistake. I'm goofy. Maybe I made it again, but it really stuck with me. It stuck with me as well, so I lost points, like a lot of them. I had to work hard to make up my grade because of that. Because a 0 on an assignment is pretty harsh for a grade. Uh, but you know, isn't the purpose of college to get an education, not to just score points? Uh, one would hope. And so, I did learn something. I learned to be careful. I learned to pay attention. Uh, I mean, I guess that's a let you be careful. That's not a, but it stuck with me. It changed me. At least I'd like to think that it did. And I didn't just get a 0 for no reason, but it was cool. I like that. I like that there was just this harsh lesson that made sense and was coming from a good place. Okay. Super Critical Snake says, normally I'd be against gatekeeping, but we should probably keep philosophers as far away from astronomy as possible. Well, what if they're a philosopher of like cosmology or time or various types of philosophy of science, philosophy of physics? It makes total sense for them to know something about astrology. One moment. All right. So Pierce says, yeah, well, Snake, you know what they say? Philosophy of science is as useful to scientists as ornithology is to birds. I'm not convinced of that. I think philosophy of science is pretty cool, and I think it might be useful. Mason says, my first course in college was botany. To this day, I still regret not going into botany. Why do you regret not going into botany? By the way, I'm like 12 minutes into this video. I hadn't even started in the video I'm going to review. I don't care. I'm here to talk to you. Uh, why botany? I have nothing against botany. Just why that? I'm trying to think what I should have done. I think I don't regret doing philosophy and psychology, so I'm cool with that. But if I went back, what would I do? I might have done more statistics. That might have been cool. Um, but the other, maybe in another life, I would have gone to like culinary school and I would have gone and been a chef, of some kind. I think like it's probably specifically some kind of baker kind of thing. I don't know. I don't know if you specialize, and I don't know enough about cooking, but it's always been an interest of mine. So let me adjust this a little bit. I feel like it's just like my neck, and I'm like straining to be in the camera. I'm like, "Ugh." One moment, camera, cooperate. Okay, what's up, Zachman? How's it going? So Pierce says he was the numbers. Yeah, this is in reference to the person that gave me 0. He was the numbers in the correct box realist, and you're acting like an anti-realist about that. So the esteemed professor needed to teach you a lesson. No, he didn't write the real grade on the back. I got a 0 on it. I agree. Land scientists might do better if they're more realistic about their practices. What do you mean by that? Philosophical. Is it creepier if I say hi or if I lurk? You know what this reminds me of? If you haven't seen, and you should totally jump in here when I when I finally get to your video, just so you know, if I don't know if you've seen my streams before, uh, I will just talk to my audience. And there was what was it a couple weeks ago? I did a streamer. People just started asking questions, and they ended up asking so many questions that just the stream was just me answering questions in the chat, and it was a race to see if I could answer questions faster than people could throw them in the chat. And I think it was about 3 hours. So it took me a while. But anyway, what you reminded me of by mentioning both creeping and lurking, have you seen Neural Viz? I don't know if anyone's okay. I got to put a link to it. It is right. It immediately became my favorite channel on all of YouTube. So I'm going to throw a link in here because you should absolutely check it out. It's I I don't have descriptions. I would start with what is it? Let me go to it. Unanswered Oddities, episode 1, Humans. Okay, so I'm not going to play it on here. I won't. I just want you to go check it out. So this channel, I put it in the chat, and let me pin it. Okay, so you got to check this out. I don't know if this is everybody's cup of tea. So it's weird, but I love this stuff. So there's a whole. If you're watching the episode thinking, where is this going? What's the purpose of this? All of the videos are interconnected, and there's an and universe related to all the stuff that you'll see in the first video. It's super just funny and weird and cool. So do check that out. I realized I never got a drink, and so I am totally unprepared to get into this review. So let me address the chat. Then I will go take a little quick break to grab a drink, and then we'll get started on the video when I get back. And anything people are saying in the chat after that, we'll hold off until we get into the video. All right, but let's address Mason because I did ask you why botany. Plant physiology is fascinating and ended up playing safe in cell biology with an emphasis on cancer research, which is interesting, but I feel closer to nature in botany. Fair enough. Yeah, cool. I don't know what I don't know what it was about anthropology that interested me so much, but it's something that I've carried with me because I ended up going into social psychology, and I feel like social psychology is cool. I like the quantitative methods. I like the approach to gathering lots of data. Personality psychology is cool. But I do feel like sometimes personality and social psychology focus so much on people in aggregate that there's a relative lack of emphasis on individuals, and that individual differences and the uniqueness of people is lost in the mix. And when you're looking at means and average behavior, and what does the typical person do and that sort of thing, you're not really looking at how unique people are. And this has been an empirical problem for this kind, like experimental psychology, is too much data on weird populations, Western educated, industrialized, rich, and democratic. It lacks the cultural diversity of even hitting the varieties of distinct populations around the world, much less the uniqueness of individuals. So I feel like we need both. Like, I do think we need that large scale quantitative data, but we also need that qualitative data. And I wish these fields interacted with one another and spoke to one another more. If you never talk about my stuff, it might be a relief. Well, so it you have what I take to be a pretty ecumenical and receptive attitude towards people disagreeing, and I really like that because uh, when I was in grad school for philosophy, I had a couple roommates, and we used to talk, especially one of them who became a good friend of mine, and we talk all the time. In fact, I talked to him, like today, like a couple hours ago. Uh, so we ended up really clashing over a lot of stuff, but in ways that I found really constructive. And so our discussions weren't debates, but he would press me on issues and show me that I was confused or wrong or mistaken or misguided about quite a lot of things, but in such a constructive way that it felt like collaboration. It was collaborative mutual destruction of our bad ideas and replacement and reconstruction with good ideas. It was awesome. And it was I wish people could have seen the way in which those conversations unfolded and how they really helped me refine my views, because for whatever reason a lot of online discourse is combative, it's argumentative. I'm a qualia quietist, and so I'm on the side of people like illusionists, eliminativists, physicalists of various kinds that are skeptical of various conceptions of qualia. And there's a bit of hostility at times, at least in the online spaces. I don't know how academics are at conferences because I don't go to that many philosophy conferences. People tend to be fairly respectful there. In online interactions, people are often contemptuous, mean spirited, rude. They ridicule one another, they mock one another. Sometimes philosophers like this, who is it? Strawson or somebody said that illusionism is the stupidest idea anybody's ever had. I can't remember exactly. Can someone look that up? I don't want to stop and look things up. Although I feel like was Joe Rogan is like, can you look that up? Can you look that up? Uh, but someone looked that up. That illusion. Screw it. I'll do it. What is that thing? I'll do it myself. All right, give me 1 second. I'm gonna look it up. All right, it didn't immediately come up in Google, so I'm not gonna keep trying to look for it. But someone go find it and let me know in the chat. Patrick says, off topic, but I really liked your comments on CC's video, latest video. Nicely calls out his unserious, overconfident nonsense. Yeah, I was thinking about mentioning that and actually going through that comment section. So what happened is Cameron Bertuzzi over at Capturing Christianity put out a video basically trying to mathematize his basis for regarding atheism as like an unserious position. It's a silly position. Whatever you make of that, what I basically said is that, I think that there are people that could pose a significant challenge to him, like James Fodor. So people that have been critical of capturing Christianity and of bad Christian apologetics in the past, and I worry that Cameron tends to cultivate relationships with people that are not super critical of him, so they might disagree, but they have to show enough disrespect and enough respect. And I understand why a person might want to say, "Look, you can't be a jerk to me," or "I'm not." You don't. No one has like a right to his time. Um, so if he wants to talk to people that show a certain level of respect or something like that, that's his prerogative. But part of my concern is that some of his harsher critics, like people that don't like him or his views, uh, I think they could bring to the table arguments that he would be hard pressed to handle, and I think it would benefit him to engage with those people and have those discussions. They would be difficult discussions. And one of the things that came up there was my attitude about the nature of debates. So, and conversations. I don't think every debate, like people think of like Lincoln Douglas debates, or these things where there's a moderator and so you got 5 minutes, you got 5 minutes. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about people with different ideas sitting down together and hashing out their differences. That could be a friendly conversation. It could be a combative conversation. It could be either one. I think both have their value. Now, what was important for that discussion was, the question of should people have prepared debates? So, one of my worries is if people think about if you're given a whole lot of time to prepare for a debate. One of the things that can happen is you study a lot of canned lines. Oh, I'm gonna use arguments 1, 2, and 3. I'm gonna prepare in advance for counter arguments A, B, and C, and then you go in there and you've got a script. And if you've worked so hard to develop that script, you want to run that script. And so what happens is one person goes in and they do all their moves, right? And then the other person comes in and they do all their moves. And it's not like people actually just duking it out. It's I'm not blocking your blow and landing a punch on you. It's just you're in one corner doing your moves and the other person's in their corner doing their moves, and they're not actually fighting. And a lot of debates end up looking like this boring choreographed scripted nonsense where people are not really engaging with one another, and then you move to open discussion, but no one ever really engaged with one another directly in the first place. So you said it's, hey, you do your little choreographed dance, I'll do my choreographed dance. Now talk. Talk about what you didn't engage with one another. So I think structured debates frequently suck. I think they're bad. I think they teach people bad habits of thought. And one of the biggest downsides to those sorts of debates, when people just have this back and forth, is that they fail to have that like the kind of Socratic cross examination that someone like Ask Yourself employs. Now, some people are critical of his approach. I love his approach. I think it's a phenomenal approach. I don't like when people get as aggressive. So I don't have that level of verbal hostility that people have. Like, and I especially don't like it when people tell people to shut up or they insult people. Not my style. But I understand where he's coming from in because it's like, okay, a person is articulating a view. You want to get clear on what their argument is, and they're refusing to get clear. I think at that point it's okay to say, no, you got to, if you want me to take this seriously, lay out your argument. And so sometimes he'll pressure people to formalize their argument. Now, for demanding that people formalize arguments, that can be misused. It could be misused to slow someone down or to be ridiculous. Or basically it could be a hurdle that you throw in someone's face. Oh, convert it into math. Oh, give me it in a Bayesian form. That could just be a way of creating obstacles. So you're creating an obstacle course for a person to jump through. And then if that person fails to do so, you could say, aha, you failed, you lose, you suck. Or if they don't want to, you could say, oh, so you're an intellectual coward that's not going to do what I demand. You lose, you suck. Or they might do it. And then at every point along the obstacle course, you could pause them and create a bunch of problems for them. And if at any point they don't want to play ball, you could say, so you're backing out, you're bailing, you lose, you suck. And so you don't want to abuse demands for rigor or clarity or formalism as a method of stalling and filibustering and basically being a argumentative sophist hack ass. You shouldn't do that. But there is a time and place for utilizing these tools effectively to hold someone's feet to the fire. And when a person is not prepared for that, That's when you see how they think on their feet. You see how, you basically you see you see their true intellectual colors. And so this idea that prepared debates is the way to go and that unprepared debates are not the way to go, I think is fundamentally misguided. I'm not saying you shouldn't do prepared debates. Those are totally fine. Do those. Uh, Avoid the pitfalls if you can. But what I want to see people really just stripped down to, I've got my views, you've got your views. Let's go. Let's see where the conversation takes us. And I like to see that laser focused cross examination where people really peel back the layers of another person's views and expose whether they really understand what they're talking about. And for people that spend a lot of time prepping in advance, they don't have to understand their views. It reminds me of, the analogy I gave in the post is, I guess it's going to take me a while to get to the review. Maybe I won't get to it. We'll see. Uh, so it reminded me of Searle's Chinese room. So the relevant parts of this, it doesn't matter what, it's a thought experiment that Searle uses for certain argumentative purposes in like philosophy of mind and stuff. It doesn't really matter. For our purposes, just imagine this scenario. Imagine you're sitting in a room and you're basically someone slips a piece of paper under the door and it has a set of Chinese characters on it. Now, this we're assuming for the sake of argument that you can't read or write in Chinese. Okay, so language doesn't matter. There's nothing specific about it. It could be French, doesn't matter. Uh, so the idea would be that it should be characters that you have no idea what they mean. So just some language where you don't even recognize the alphabet. It could be Cyrillic. It doesn't matter. So the point is just, okay, so you get these sheets of paper and it has a set of Chinese characters. So now you have a book, right? Or it could be these days on a computer. And in the book, you have the output that's associated with it. So you look up in the book and it's like, okay, so you look through, is it pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3? Okay, it's pattern 312. Okay. Now the thing I do is, since it's pattern 312, it's paired with another pattern or set of characters. And what you do is you print that out and you slip that back under the door. And so and then a few minutes later, you get a second sheet that's slipped under the door given to you, and you look that up, and it's pair 119. You print out the corresponding set of characters, you slip it under the door. Now you're just following the simple rule, which is whatever characters you get, you visually match them to another set of characters like that they're paired with, and then you send that under the door. Now, what are you doing? You're following this just dumb rule where you don't understand what you're doing. You can't read any of this. You don't know what any of this means. But the person on the outside of the door, from their point of view, it's Chinese characters that they're typing up or writing or whatever, and it's like, hi, my name is Lance. How are you? And then they put it under the door, and then you're sending back, hi, nice to meet you. My name is whatever. It's Alex, Patrick. And then they're like, oh, great. Okay, so this person knows Chinese, and but let's ask them some more questions. And they ask you questions, and then you're responding, but you're just using this big lookup table. Now, Searle's whole point is like that you wouldn't actually understand the language. Now, never mind that. The issue here is that if you don't really internalize and understand arguments, if they don't fit together into a holistic, well put together worldview, you can nevertheless memorize or learn a host of arguments by just going, oh, okay, here's this theodicy, here's this theodicy, here's this argument, here's that argument, here's this rebuttal. So if someone, uses this particular argument from evil, here's a set of responses this Christian apologist gave. I'll use, versions 1, 3, and 5. I think those are the good ones to use. And so what can happen is you might not really know whether they're good arguments. You might not understand the arguments being presented. You might not understand the arguments you're responding with. You might not recognize that your first argument, your fifth argument are actually, they contradict one another, or they rely on background presumptions that are in really strong tension with one another. You may not realize it. So what ends up happening is all your argumentative moves are like Searle's Chinese room. It's, hey, someone presented argument A, you give rebuttal, 1. Oh, someone presents argument B, you give rebuttal 2. So, the problem with prepared debates is that people don't have to understand anything. I bet you that you could have a prepared debate where the person memorizes what the standard arguments are that the other person used. Like, let's say they watch their debates and they know that the person uses 5 main arguments. They could just go memorize 5 standard responses to the 5 main arguments, not understand them at all, and just regurgitate them and have no idea what any of them mean. And it might look like that person is doing a good job defending their view, and they literally cannot understand what they're saying. It would be really funny if you could get somebody to read off the arguments off a script in a language that they don't know. So It'd be really funny if you could do that because, it could show a person could appear that'd be really hard because they would, like, not get the accent right and they wouldn't pronounce the words correctly. But the point is that a person could, in principle, really just not have a particularly good internalized understanding. And I worry with prepared debates that that's what's happening, that people aren't really demonstrating a coherent internalized worldview that is defensible. They're just regurgitating and pantomiming and mimicking. And it ends up turning prepared debates to me end up looking like a lot of choreographed dancing and parroting. And I don't think it's substantive. And I think live debates where people are not prepared and they get cross-examined in unexpected ways are really good ways of exposing people's shortcomings in their perspectives and showing when a person doesn't really know what they're talking about and in really having a more productive discussion. So I think more discussion should be intentionally impromptu and unprepared. And yeah, I said to people in the comments, I'm like, look, I'll have a planned debate about why I think unplanned debates are better, or an unplanned debate, whatever you want. So this is an open call. If anyone disagrees with me about this, I mean, unless they're like going to scream on my channel or something, like anybody reasonable, I am happy to have a planned or unplanned debate with you about this. So I'm ready to go. Literally anybody, I don't care. Again, like with caveats, like I have veto power if I actually want to debate somebody or not. But I'm pretty open to having discussions about this. Sapir says, yeah, but Lance I was referencing the guy from your recent stream, I think last night, that claimed to prank his students with his grade because they didn't accept the professor's realist view or whatever. Yeah, what I didn't like about that is that it's not inconsistent with relativism or anti-realism to object to people giving you a bad grade. It would only be some type of individual agent relativism where that would be the case. And why presume that that's the view your students have? Jonah asks least favorite philosopher. Probably Hegel, because it doesn't sound to me like Hegel is saying anything meaningful. It looks like a bunch of gibberish to me. So if perspective philosophy hears that, he's probably going to upset him. But yeah, it looks like nonsense to me. That's the first one that came to mind. I'm sure there's worse philosophers. Carlos says dance monkey dance. I don't know what that means. Philosoph says the constructive supportive battles are awesome, the coolest stuff ever. It is sort of what I've always tried to bring to the intro classes and now to YouTube. Awesome. Okay. Yeah, I saw you had a follow-up video where you were explaining your sort of pedagogical rationale, how, you have one line which I was going to respond to about, we all act like we have free will. And anyone that denies that is foolish. Did you say full of shit? Something like that? I like that when it's motivated by a provocative. Like I like when people are provocative as long as they're good natured about it and they don't belittle and treat people like crap afterwards, provoke the hell out of people. I think it's cool. I mean, within reason. Uh, I was just objecting to the one about relativism, but that's because I think there was something inaccurate about that. Spiritual Psychotherapy Services says greetings from Manila, everybody or everyone. Yeah, greetings. Lee Is that yeah, Lee. Okay. There's a Stance Independent best ice cream flavor. There's actually a paper that argues for that. And I think they specifically mentioned peanut butter ice cream, which is probably my favorite. I love peanut butter. I just peanut butter everything. So I just eat it with a spoon sometimes, just straight, just peanut butter right out of the jar. I don't dip the spoon though. So I go through several spoons if I need more. Need more. Like I need peanut butter. That's I didn't even think about how ridiculous it is that I need more. Need it? No one needs peanut butter. Clashman the Third says, "Are you aware of any forms of moral naturalism that aren't trivially true? I want to see realists to go check out. I found some new moral properties with my microscope." So is it? So David Kopp has I think it's a new book out, but David Kopp argues that it argues for a naturalist realist view and argues that you can sort of retain normativity with that view. I don't know what that ends up looking like. I haven't read the book and I haven't even listened to the whole talk that he had on Friction's channel, but I'll throw a link to that in the chat here and you can go check that out. I just haven't got around to it. So there are naturalists that I think purport to be able to pull it off. William Lane Craig often literally does this, and his responses won't make sense. What? I don't know what that's in reference to. Philosophuncula says, "I'm sorry that I have to go. I love what you're doing. I'm super flattered that you're taking the time to discuss the video, but I have to run." Yeah, just watch it later. So it'll be up later. Carlos says, when you're talking about going over scripts, it's not duking it out. It's do my script, now speak. So it's like, so it's like dance monkey dance. Yeah, precisely. Yeah. Yeah. It's just people not really talking to one another. It's people talking at each other. Why would someone want that? Finboy Origami says, "I'm peanut butter obsessed. We may be soulmates." Yeah, I absolutely love peanut butter. You know what I like about peanut butter? I was going to say, you know what I like about peanut butter, and then immediately talk about something that's not peanut butter. Okay, so I like peanut butter, but I don't know what happened. I don't know. Was it 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that people just went totally wild with all the nut butters? There's all these nut butters. I've seen watermelon seed butter. I didn't try it. I really should have. I don't know if I'm going to get a chance to see it again. Sunflower seed butter, almond butter, which is good, cashew butter, which is great. I've seen pistachio butter, but I've never had it. So we could rank nuts. We could do a tier list of nuts. So what's the best nut? Is it the peanut? No, it's not the peanut. Cashew. It's got to be cashews or pistachios for me. Let's see. Cashews. Cashews are the best nut. Um, then pistachios, then peanuts. Then I don't know. After that, they're kind of all in they're not the big three for me. So you got walnuts, almonds, um, all the standard macadamia nuts. Those are pretty good. Uh, Brazil nuts, I like those. Apparently, you can't eat too many of them because they have high selenium or something. I don't know. Uh, what are the other nuts? There's like pumpkin seeds. Those are fine. Sunflower seeds, not, yeah, they're not that great. Uh, what am I missing? I know I'm missing stuff. Whatever. Okay, Carlos, settle down with that. I'm not putting that up here. So Clashman the Third says, "Interesting. I'll check out the David Kopp video." Yeah, and if you end up watching it and finding it really cool, you welcome to leave a comment. All right. So Barney says peanuts, pistachio, cashew. Well, at least you have them. That's an acceptable order. I might put peanuts at the top. So if I was gonna like just have a snack where this is a ridiculous thing to be talking about. Whatever, I like food. I'm allowed to talk about food. Yeah, why am I justifying talking about what I want to talk about on my channel? I can talk about whatever I want. Uh, why am I saying that? This is getting too meta. Okay. So if I'm just gonna like munch by the handful, I think I'd prefer cashews, then pistachios, then peanuts. And I can tell you part of the reason. So I just like cashews better, but pistachios also have that problem that they come in those stupid shells, and if you don't have them shelled, they're like it's like prying open, and like some of them don't want to open up, and like I've tried like I've like pulled my fingernail back trying to get them open. I hate that. I don't want to deal with that. So pistachios that knocks them down just a little bit, but they're also really good like crumbled and put on certain desserts. Like my favorite dessert. I don't know how to say it properly. Kanafa. So I don't know if I've talked about that before, but that's my favorite dessert, and that's got a lot of times crushed pistachio, and it just goes on there. So pistachio's got that. It's got a good flavor. But peanuts, they're so versatile. You could put them in all kinds of stuff. They go in sauces, they go in desserts, they go in savory dishes. They go all over the place. So they have a versatility. Kind of like if you pick the best vegetables for the kitchen. I'd probably pick onions. Like they're such a staple in my cooking that it'd be hard to make a lot of the food that I make without onions. Now, do I want to bite into an onion? Not particularly. That wouldn't be good. And even just cooked onions, they're not the like if I have my option of like sautéed shiitake mushrooms or sautéed onions, probably pick the mushrooms. But like I'm not going to put shiitake mushrooms in everything. That would be weird, and I would get sick of it. But I could have onions every day, and I don't get sick of it. So peanuts are more like the onion of nuts. Peanuts are the onions of nuts. Does that make sense, or do I sound like an insane person? Yeah. So Jenna asks thoughts on ethical veganism. It's not something I really address or discuss. Vegans should win eventually. So I'm not a vegan and I don't do vegan activism, but I want to get the hell out of their way when they do their activism. So uh, yeah, I guess I could say that. Falsa Funkula says, I look forward to discussing my half baked pseudo neo Kantian constructivist argument with anyone. All right, sounds good with anyone. because I could find some people you're not going to want to talk to about it. Why would I do that though? Barney says, "True, the shells are bad. Pistachios are good on pizza. What kind of pizza are you eating with pistachios on it?" I'm not against the idea. So people will complain about pineapple pizza, but I like mango pizza. So they could, I put kiwi on a pizza. I don't care. You can't stop me. I'm a gastronomic anti-realist. I can do what I want. But yeah, I like sweet savory combinations. So I wouldn't do like kiwi and mushrooms. That sounds really bad. But I think fruit with certain combinations, fruit with something salty would be good in certain contexts. You could sing in certain contexts, but you know what I mean. But pistachios, I wonder what kind of pizza that would be. It maybe like a white base for a pizza. I don't know. Lost of Funky says you're clearly spectacularly wrong. Chocolate cherry Garcia is the best ice cream flavor. So I like that sounds better. So I don't like plain chocolate ice cream very much. I never been into it. If you give me dark chocolate ice cream, I might like that. Dark chocolate with cherry, that might be good. Um, but I like a turtle sundae. You know what I'm talking about? Like what I don't even know what's in it. Is it peanuts? Peanuts, chocolate, and caramel? I don't know. Brian says peanuts are immoral due to their anti-nutrient. I don't know what's about. Don't try to ruin peanuts for me. Anti-nutrients. Darren is asking me about direct referentialism and content externalism. Don't know enough about those off the top of my head to really engage. Sorry. So it's stuff. It's the kind of stuff I'd have to go look up and read about it. Barney says, yeah, this is ridiculous. I'm like, oh, question about moral realism. Whatever. And then I get back to talking about nuts. But I will get to the video eventually, even though it's been 45 minutes. I guess this is going to be 2 or 3 parter. Coconut. Yeah, I love coconut. Joni says you'll be spared during the vegan revolution. All right. And okay, this is the last one for the ice cream. Then I'm going to go do a break, and then we'll get into the video. And Darren, if you wanna leave a comment on the video, I could go look that up and see what I think. Because I don't have like a prepared canned response to that. I should say, there's not that much to say. Just ask a comment about that, or you could go to my Q&A video because I still haven't done that, and throw something in there, and then I could go look it up and see what I think about this stuff. Usually, it's just stuff I have to dig out of the back of my memory. It's like in a shelf in the back somewhere, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, that. This even happens with stuff that I used to be familiar with. I get really rusty with stuff. Spend 8 years doing a PhD in psychology, and a lot of the philosophy stuff gets lost in the attic somewhere. So yeah, feel free to leave a comment and I'll try to address that. Uh, okay. So Carlos says Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey, banana ice cream, and chocolate covered bananas. Fudge chunks, peanut butter cups. That all sounds great. Yeah, I like the banana chocolate peanut butter combo. Okay, this got too silly with all the food references, so we're gonna bring it back to the video when I get back. So quick break, grabbing a drink, being right back. It's gonna take me a couple minutes. All right, I am back. Okay, let's get started on the video. Can't put it off any longer. All right. By the way, did anyone check out NeuralViz? I should have said everybody go watch that while I was gone because it's only like a 2-minute video, 2 or 3, whatever. Okay. Let's do share. There we are. So someone can make a note of it that it's at the 47-minute marker where we got started on the video. I don't know. Maybe I got to put that in the put that in and pin it. Yeah. Oh my, I'm getting started and my brain's not working. So this is not a good sign. Let's see where it goes. Okay. So I started this where I think he gets into where he starts talking about stuff. There might be a bit of setup. I don't know how much I'm going to have to wait to start having commentary, but we'll see. And yeah, this is still freezing. And I contacted StreamYard about it. So I want to get that fixed. So we'll see. We'll see what the deal is with that.
Let's start with Brandon's presentation of the moral argument and his request.
Okay. That's a little low for me. I'm going to have to turn the volume up. Give me a moment. If you ever see me making multiple adjustments, I could actually tell you why. So I have to use a white noise, and if I up the like master volume, I have to lower the white noise volume so I could hear people. And I use the white noise because I have outrageously severe tinnitus. Like it breaks the 10 out of 10. It's like it's not a 10 out of 10. It's like a 14 out of a 10. It's wildly loud. I can't even really fully mask it, but I got to use a white noise, and that's part of the reason I wear headphones all the time. Okay, let's see.
Because morality.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. How does that sound to everybody else? Because I have it on max volume in here. Do I? Yeah. Okay. All right, we'll take it back. I gotta crank this up a little bit. Okay, there we go. Perfect for me. Hope it's good for everybody else if it's not too bad. All right, let's get started.
Then you should Google Australian Mountain Doodle puppies. They're adorable. So let's start with Brandon's presentation of the moral argument and his request.
Because morality is objective, and because objective morality requires there to be a moral lawgiver, it follows logically that there is a moral lawgiver, that there is actually a God. I would love to hear, I know people in the comments.
It's so strange that this argument is pushed so hard by Christians because I don't understand why anyone would think that the first premise is true. Like why think that moral realism requires God? I've just never seen any like I just haven't seen a particularly good argument for that. But that's not usually the approach I take. I just argue against moral realism.
I'm expecting it. I'm anticipating it. People are going to have, I think, some disagreements with that. And so I welcome those. I want to hear those. I've seen those in other videos, but I haven't really effectively seen anybody actually dismantle that core, basically syllogism.
So Brandon
Hasn't seen anybody dismantle the syllogism. Okay. Yeah, I mean that's a whole discussion in and of itself, and we're here for this response to it.
presents us with his version of the moral argument, which is a really straightforward, popular way to present it. If an objective moral law exists, God exists. Objective moral law exists, therefore God exists. He then challenges us to dismantle this syllogism. A syllogism just being this straightforward sort of deductive two-premise argument. In this case, it's if P then Q, P therefore Q. For those of you playing along at home and taking an intro to logic class, that would be modus ponens. Apparently, the most popular way to attempt to dismantle this argument in the land of YouTube philosophy, atheist, theist debates, etc., is to deny that an objective moral law exists. And I promise in a future video to give you the best arguments I know of that undermine the claim that objective morality exists. But in this video, I want to do something I haven't seen anyone in the world of YouTube philosophy, atheist, theist, apologetic sorts of stuff ever do, which is undermine that initial premise that if there exists a moral law, there has to exist some sort of divine lawgiver. I'm going to give you an argument for a moral law that relies on none God.
So at first, some atheists and agnostics do present secular cases for moral realism, and they don't even agree with me. So Joe Schmidt over at Majesty of Reason is a moral realist, and he's an agnostic. Benjamin Watkins is an atheist that publicly defends moral realism. Michael Humer is on YouTube quite a bit. So there's quite a few people. I don't know if any of them have specifically presented a case for moral realism in response to the moral argument, but they certainly do so from a secular, at least not explicitly theistic perspective. So that the type of moral realism that they're going to defend is not one that requires there to be a god. So there are a few cases out there on YouTube. Of course, there secular cases of moral realism in the academic literature, but they are on YouTube as well. So, but there's nothing wrong with presenting another case.
What will it rely on? This cup of water, a neo-Kantian argument borrowed from Christine Korsgaard, who I believe to be the greatest moral and political philosopher alive, and a little bit of special sauce from me. To begin, we're going to talk a little subjective, instrumental sorts of value. Something like this cup of water is instrumentally valuable because it's valuable to me to satisfy a particular desire or to fulfill a particular purpose. The water is valuable to quench my thirst or to soothe my throat. And almost no one argues that instrumental value doesn't exist. We all see it all the time, everywhere, every day. We satisfy our desires, we fulfill our purposes. The problem is all of those sorts of value are clearly subjective. You might not want water. You might not be thirsty. You might be drowning in a river and the last thing you want or need is water. So you can see how it might be difficult to come up with a universal, objective moral law if it's the case that all of our values are subjective or instrumental.
Yeah, I think it's a little, I'm not convinced that one should be saying if it's an instrumental value, then it's subjective. So I take instrumental values to be means to ends, and whether or not a particular means fulfills a particular end, that wouldn't be made true by your attitudes or preferences. So for instance, if you desire to quench your thirst, the fact that a glass of water would or would not quench your thirst, that wouldn't be made true by your attitudes or preferences. So it would actually be the non-instrumental desires that could potentially be subjective, like I want to quench my thirst. And I wouldn't typically think of instrumental values as being subjective. That I'm not sure that that's right. So, right out of the gate, I'm a little concerned about saying if it's instrumental, it's subjective. That might actually be the opposite of true.
They depend on a person's wants or desires or
I see. Okay. So, but they wouldn't have to. So let's say that you have a stance independent obligation to protect people um, to the best of your ability, and instrumentally to a certain course of action, like becoming a doctor would be the best way to protect people, or whatever. Becoming a superhero would be the best way to protect people. Whatever it would be, it doesn't really matter. The point would just be that conditional on you having some sort of stance independent moral obligation, there would be instrumental means of more or like doing a better or worse job of complying with those stance independent moral obligations. And so instrumental considerations can be instrumental with respect to a stance independent moral obligation or goal or value or whatever it might be. And in that case, the instrumentality, it would be a little weird to say it's subjective. It wouldn't be subjective. So, but they could, in other words, you could have subjective purposes or goals or interests or values or whatever that could be achieved through one or another of various instrumental means. And you could have stance independent moral obligations that could be achieved through various instrumental means. And there may be stance independent facts about what those sort of non-instrumental goals or values or obligations are. And then the instrumental facts that would, the instrumental actions that would accord with them, they wouldn't be up to you. So I don't know why instrumental value is being construed as though it's rooted in subjectivity, because I'm not sure that that's true. I mean, just to give an example, just think of utilitarianism. So if you're a moral realist and a utilitarian, then you think you ought to maximize utility. That's not up to you. And the means by which you maximize utility are also not up to you. And so if it turned out, hey, you got to push the person off the bridge and they'll fall to their death and it'll stop the train from hitting 5 people, even if you don't want to, like, you're like, ugh, that's an awful thing to do. You got to use them as a means to an end, and that's not up to you. So yeah, I don't think, and that would be an instrumental value. It would be instrumentally valuable to shove the person off the bridge to stop the train from hitting the 5 people. And it would be instrumentally valuable in the service of a stance independent moral obligation. There you go. I should have just given that example from the outset, but I'm thinking in real time. So whatever, give me a break. But yeah, so I don't think this is correct. instrumental values are not necessarily subjective.
Or needs or intentions. To use some of the examples from the video where we got Brandon's request, they discuss whether or not murder's wrong. Well, if we're saying it's totally subjective, murder's just wrong because people don't want to be murdered. That's subjective. Or they talk about child sexual assault. Well, we don't want children to be sexually assaulted, or children don't want to be sexually assaulted. But if we're basing the moral law on the wants or the desires, those are all bound to be subjective. So if we're going to have a universal moral law, we have to find something that's valuable and worth protecting that doesn't depend on anyone's subjective preferences. And that's exactly what Kant and then Korsgaard and then little old me are going to try to do. So let's take a look at what it takes for something like this cup of water to be instrumentally valuable. First, it takes something that I already mentioned, a desire. The water has to have the ability to satisfy a particular desire or want or need or inclination or intention, or it's not case, if it's to quench my thirst, it's valuable because if I drink it, it quenches my thirst. But that clearly illustrates that having the desire isn't enough to make the water valuable, because if I can't act on that desire, I can never satisfy it. So part of what creates value in the water is my ability to act on my desire as being worthy enough to pursue. For Kant and Korsgaard, and the purposes of this argument, that means
I want to take this back for a second.
Mentioned a desire. The water has to have the ability to satisfy a particular desire or want or need or inclination or intention, or it's never going to have any value at all. So in this case, if it's to quench my thirst, it's valuable because if I drink it, it quenches my thirst.
So I already have a problem here, which is that like to create value or for it to be valuable. Now, I think one can value water, but I worry when someone starts moving from saying that a person values water to the water is valuable. So I worry about reification here, whether one is taking the notion of a person valuing something and then treating that thing as having the property of value. I don't think things have the property of being valuable. I think things are valued. And so when I speak of something being valuable, what I mean is it's valued or potentially valued or something like that. So I think people value, but I don't think things have value independent of people valuing them. So I already worry that there's some potential terminological slippage that could lead to some conceptual slippage right here from the outset.
But that clearly illustrates that having the desire isn't enough to make the water valuable, because if I can't act on that desire, I can
See, this is where I'm already getting worried. So having the desire isn't enough to make the water valuable. I'm not quite sure what that means. So if I desire water and I don't have a means of obtaining water, I still desire water. And I don't think there's any further fact than that. So to say, let's say I use the term value to mean synonymously with desire. I desire water. I value water. I don't think desiring water like generates value in the water as if I'm creating a new fact that is like exists in addition to or independently of the fact that I desire it. There are facts about what I desire. And you could say that I value things, but I don't think that there's further facts. I don't think desires create value. And so no, in this image here, it says creation of value. I already worry about that. Creation. I don't think value is created in any literal sense. So I worry about the terminology and the term, like the way this is being framed, as if desires create value or generate value or something like that. I already am. Don't think that I grant that that's the case, and I think that that's going to lead into at least some of the other characterizations and like key components of this idea of creating value. That like it couldn't be valuable if you couldn't get it or you couldn't act to obtain it. Well, you could still value something even if you couldn't get it. So I don't think you would need free will to value something. If you want to say it wouldn't be valuable unless you could get it, we could talk about what exactly you mean. So I can't like realize or obtain the things I value unless I can obtain the things I value. I mean, that's trivially true. But I worry that a lot of what could be parsed out in straightforwardly descriptive and in many cases kind of empty, trivial terms could bleed into deeper and more dubious metaphysical theses, like as a result of some kind of reification or something like that. We'll see.
Never satisfy it. So part of what creates value in the water is my ability to act on my desire as being worthy enough to pursue.
Act on the desires being worthy enough to pursue. That sounds really strange. So if I have desires to obtain things, I don't have to think that they're worthy to pursue, like in addition to that. I act on my desires straightforwardly. So like I don't have a desire and then I'm like, this desire is worth pursuing, but that other desire isn't worth pursuing. I think all my desires are worth pursuing. For them to be worth pursuing just is to say that I desire them. So I feel like a lot of the terminology here is generating distinction. So there's desires, there's value, you value things, and then the things are valuable, and then things are worth pursuing, but worth pursuing isn't identical to desiring or valuing them. So what I think a lot of what goes on with analytic approaches to philosophy is that people start throwing all these terms around that look like they mean different things and start being used to draw distinctions and contrast with one another when it's unclear whether there are any substantive and deep contrasts here or distinctions here, and whether we're not just inventing a house of terminological cards that don't have really robust conceptual content.
For Kant and Korsgaard and the purposes of this argument, that means I have a free will. And before everybody hops in the comments, there are lots of really good arguments as to how and why free will could not and does not exist. But I want you to hold on to them because I'm going to talk about free will in a way you might not be used to. And I'll address your concerns when I consider some objections. So if you hop in right now and just say free will doesn't exist, all I'm going to do is maybe tease you a little bit for being too impatient and having the attention span of a 12-year-old who was raised on an iPad. I'm trying.
Yeah. So my immediate reaction is to do exactly that. It's to jump in. So I like the image here. Don't be an impatient idiot. So I've done this before. So I did this on a Capturing Christianity video where it was about psychophysical harmony. And I was like, you don't have to be a dualist, blah, blah, blah. And then that was already addressed immediately after that, but I didn't get caught up on the stream and I looked very silly and foolish. I made up for it. I ended up writing like 4 blog posts talking about how much I disagree with psychophysical harmony. I went and just read the whole damn paper. I was like, no one's going to get me on this again. And I read the whole paper and then wrote critiques of it. I try to avoid making the same mistake too many times in a row, at least. So yeah, I'm one of these impatient people.
Trying to prove universal objective moral law. At least wait until you hear the whole argument before you fire off in the comments section. So this conception of free will consists of 2 parts. First, we have a deliberative will, the ability to consider options and choose. We can choose between water and coffee and bourbon and a martini and prime and Celsius and a jug of nootropics from Joe Rogan that are going to make our brains smarter. And
that's the second Joe Rogan reference. Why are there so many Rogan references? What's going on?
Survey the landscape. We have all of those options and we can consider them and make a choice. Decide which one we want and which one's going to satisfy our desire. And then in order to satisfy the desire, we have to be able to act on that choice, which is the second part of a free will. Our choice has to be able to serve as the cause for our action. I realize I'm thirsty, I survey the landscape, I choose the cup of water, and then I act in such a way to have that water satisfy my desire. So in order for this water to become valuable, I need to have a desire, then I need to be able to consider options, make a choice, and act on that desire. Another feature of this account of free will that differentiates it from the way a lot of people think of freedom is, given this account, freedom doesn't mean the ability to pursue your desires. It's the ability to choose which ones you pursue or choose to not pursue any of them at all. One needs to be able to overcome their desires, or you're just a slave to instinct or a slave to your desires. You're not making any free choices at all. So one needs to be able to say, oh, I really want to eat the entire bag of chili cheese Fritos and the entire bag of Sour Patch Kids, but I probably shouldn't because I'm a grown man and I'm not going to do that to myself. Fritos and Sour Patch Kids aside, It's not going to be enough for me to have a desire, choose how I'm going to satisfy that desire, and then go ahead and pursue satisfying that desire in order to create value. I've got to be smart enough to get it done. And for the purposes of this argument, that amounts to having a degree of practical rationality. At the very least, I'm capable of not contradicting my own purpose. I don't go grab the cup of water and say, oh, I'm so thirsty, and then dump it on my head. No, I'm not dumping it on my head. I am not that committed to the bit, and I don't think it would help you better understand the argument. I have to be.
I gotta say, I think it would help me better. And I don't understand this argument. Could you please pour it on your head? You're gonna have to do another video because I don't understand. You're gonna have to. Okay, that's stupid. Whatever.
Able
Let's keep
to
going.
fulfill my desire by grabbing the water, recognizing that in order to fulfill that desire, I have to drink it, and I can't contradict my own purpose by chucking it over my head. And having that degree of practical rationality, the ability to recognize and avoid contradictions, isn't really that big of an ask. If we look at Korsgaard's argument for it, it's enough for me to call your name and you to answer. Because if you respond to me calling your name, you recognize your name as referring to you and not all the beings who are not you. Contradictions can never be true, and we all get it. As Aristotle put it, it's a first principle that everybody's committed to. One could be the most extreme radical skeptic in the world, and Aristotle points out you can't be skeptical of that. Because if you're skeptical,
There are people that are skeptical of this, though. There are like dialetheists and people that reject conventional logics. So they do exist. I mean, maybe we would all think that's silly, but there are people that make these sorts of claims. Yeah, Zachman says, I like this guy. Yeah, so do I. So I like his vibe. It's yeah. Don't know what else there is to say besides that.
of the principle of non-contradiction. As he puts it, you render yourself mute. You turn yourself into a vegetable because every word you say singles out something that means something other than what it's not. Everything you do, you anticipate a particular consequence for that action because it's different from all of those consequences that you don't want. It's a condition of being the sort of conscious creature we are and existing in the world. So in order to get the value from the water, I have the desire, I have to be able to choose and then act on that desire, and I have to be competent enough to recognize a contradiction and not dump the water on my head when I want to drink it. But so far, this is just about me satisfying a desire. It's not saying anything about value, because value seems to be the sort of thing that arises when we're making a judgment about an action or about a desire, or about choosing to satisfy a particular desire. Saying something's valuable isn't saying, ooh, water satisfies the desire. We're saying, oh, water satisfies the desire, and thumbs up for satisfying it. We're making a value judgment by saying something's better or worse.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Are we doing that? That seems to be adding an extra step. I'm not sure that we need to add add a thumbs up. So, I try to satisfy my goals and desires, but I don't have like an extra thought, which is that it is good to satisfy my goals and desires. I just want to satisfy my goals and desires. I don't like have a desire to satisfy my goals and desires. That would be weird.
It's good.
Yeah, Patrick says thumbs up for satisfying non-cognitivism. I don't think so. I don't think he's suggesting that.
Or bad, right or wrong. And in order to do that,
sorry, I paused that too many times. So let me take it back a few seconds.
Desire using to satisfy a particular desire. Saying something's valuable isn't saying, ooh, water satisfies the desire. We're saying, oh, water satisfies the desire, and thumbs up for satisfying it. We're making a value judgment by saying something's better or worse, good or bad, right or wrong. And in order to do that, someone has to be capable of examining a want, a need, a desire, an action based on that desire, and the satisfaction of that desire as being good or bad. And that takes a different point of view. When I'm judging.
See, that's what I'm not sure about. So I may have to think like drinking. Okay, so like if I'm thirsty and I want to drink something, I think it would be good to satisfy my desire, but I think I just want to satisfy my desire. I don't think that there's like goodness is something in addition to satisfying the desires. Like I just have desires and I'm motivated to satisfy them, and I call that good. I don't think the goodness is something in addition to desire satisfaction. I just think agents have goals and agents are motivated to satisfy their goals. And what it means for them to be motivated is just that they have the desires. And like, so basically you have targets and then you move towards the target. That's how I think our agency works. And I don't think there are additional further facts. So I think I think language convinces people, it gets people to think that there's like extra properties and extra stuff going on. And I don't think that there is. I don't think we need to posit that stuff to account for having a goal and acting to achieve the goal.
My own actions, it means I have to be able to reflect on my actions and examine them from a degree of remove. I have to be reflectively conscious. I have to be able to say, oh, drinking that water, thumbs up, or drinking that water, boo hiss, thumbs down. If I wasn't reflectively conscious, I would just be moving through the world, satisfying my desires, following my instincts, never thinking twice about it. I would be a lion ripping a gazelle's face off and eating it because the lion afterwards isn't thinking, I wonder if I should have done that a little differently. So saying that the water is valuable is different than just drinking it. It's having the desire, making the choice to act on that desire, then acting on the desire, drinking the water, and making a judgment about whether or not that was the right thing to do. Was it good or bad? Now, how does that get us to
Again, I don't know that you need to make that further judgment.
some sort of universal objective moral law without God? Well, if it takes those 4 characteristics for me to value the water, and I value the water, then I necessarily value those 4 characteristics, because without them, I could never ever get value from the water. If I didn't have the desire, I wouldn't give a shit.
So this strikes me as a bit contentious. A lot of it is going to turn on what it means to say, okay, so let's say certain conditions have to be met in order for you to value a glass of water, right? Or value having a glass of water. I'm not sure it follows that I necessarily have to value those conditions. It might be that I need the conditions in order to value things. But for instance, I wouldn't be able to value things if like I didn't have a brain. Does that mean I have to value my brain in order to value things? And what does it mean to say that I have to value it? So do I like what are we talking about? Do I go, oh, yeah, my brain is valuable? Because I don't know that thought would ever occur to me. Like I wouldn't think about the fact that it might be the case that my brain is necessary for me to value things, but I don't know that I actually need to entertain that my brain is valuable. Like, do I have to have the thought? What does it mean to say that I have to? In other words, if there are conditions necessary for me to value things, what exactly would it mean to say that I have to value those things? In what sense? I maybe there's a lack of clarity here about what that would mean.
If I couldn't choose and act on the desire, then I wouldn't be able to create the value. If I wasn't rational, I wouldn't be able to satisfy my desire because I'd be dumping water on my head. And if I couldn't reflect and say, yeah, good job, drink water when you're thirsty, do that again next time, then I wouldn't be able to christen it valuable.
So let's just grant all that for the sake of argument. I think one could dispute whether we actually meet these criteria or whether these criteria are actually necessary or important for anything in particular. I'll just set that aside. Let's say we grant that these criteria, we need these for creating value or whatever. Just for the sake of argument. Even if we grant that we need these things, again, just because I need something, why would that mean that I have to value it? There might be a whole bunch of things that I need in order to value things. It doesn't mean that I value those things. In many cases, I may not be aware of them. So, most people aren't going to know this. So do you value things if you aren't unaware of them? Like maybe, but it's going to depend on what you mean by valuing things. It would seem a little weird to say that I value something and I don't know it exists and I don't have any thoughts about it. And what if you disagree? So what if it's like technically true that you need to meet these 4 conditions in order to value having a glass of water? And you actually did study philosophy, but you reject this. So you actually say, no, I don't value those things. I disagree with this view. Do you still necessarily value them anyway when you go about valuing water? That would be a little weird because then your explicit commitments would be inconsistent with what you allegedly necessarily value. And if that's possible, one, you could say it's not possible. So, then if we find these philosophers saying, I don't agree with these 4 criteria, I don't value one or more of them, are they confused or lying, or what's going on there? I mean, something strange would be happening there if he said it's not possible for a person to genuinely not value these things. Um, but if you do, if you do have to value them, it would be a little weird to say it's like, let's say that somehow that is consistent. You could somehow both deny that you value them, but you still do value them. That would be like, what is one like an explicit value and the other's an implicit value? Are these different types of value if they could happen at the same time? So if they can't happen at the same time, that's going to create problems because we're going to find, like, dialectically, we're going to encounter people that would reject these. And then it'd be a little weird to say, nope, you in fact do value them. And so it's not possible for you to reject value. And they're like, no, but I do reject it. Nope, you can't. You can't. But they're like, but I do, though. That'd be a little weird. And if that wouldn't be an issue, you could say, yeah, sure. You could say you reject them, but in some way you do actually, you do in fact value them. If we're going to say that's possible, now we're going to have to ask some psychological questions about how it could be that a person both does and does not value those things, and presumably in a way that would be non-contradictory. Let's just grant that it's not a contradiction. Okay, then we're using value in at least two different senses, because presumably people can have explicit positions on what they value or don't value, and people are generally, I would think, would have pretty good access to whether they value those things. And if we're imagining that it's philosophers in particular that are explicitly rejecting that these four criteria are necessary for them to value things or whatever. Now we're going to say highly reflective, well-trained, and educated people that are very familiar with the ideas and arguments in question. Those people are now saying, yeah, I don't value those things. So it would be a bit of a difficulty to say they're incorrect about that. Like they don't even have introspective access in that case. Like I can imagine someone like not realizing, let's say a person always takes the train to work, and you say, oh, so you really value the train, it gets you to work. And they're like, I don't care about the train, whatever. And you're like, no, but like, think about it. Like if there was no train, you wouldn't be able to get to work. It'd be a real pain in the butt. And don't you like going in the train? You say you always read in the train. And they're like, oh yeah. Oh, I guess I do value the train. So a person might not realize they value something, and then they think about it and they're like, oh, I do. But when you're talking about like a philosopher that's really reflected on the matter and formed a position on the matter, it'd be a little weird to say that I'm not saying they couldn't be, but it'd be a little weird to say that they're wrong. So I think there's already going to be some issues here, pretty much from the outset. Made by Jim Bub says he's committing is ought fallacy. He's conflating a moral claim with a set of necessary preconditions. Maybe you could bring that up with it. I don't tend to push is ought problems, but he could be. I mean, maybe he'll see this and react to that. Might as well just see what other people have said. Patrick says, my dog fairly clearly has doubts, guilt, reject. Sure, it's a dog style, but I don't see why a lion can't question their past actions. I don't know if lions question their past actions. I don't know if they can or can't, but I just don't know if they do. Yeah, so you say this. So Patrick says he's diving headfirst into a regress by... Sorry, why not valuing? Yeah, this occurred to me too, that there might be a regress issue here, and I don't know how the regress would be stopped. I mean, it could just be embraced. That'd be a little weird, but we'll see. I think there'll come a point where I think that there's going to be this regress issue.
It's the same as saying if I value a house, I necessarily value the bricks and mortar and wiring and concrete that goes into building it. Even
so, does that follow? If you value a house, do you value the bricks that go into the building of the house? I don't know that I grant that. Like, I'm not saying I think that that's got to be wrong, but it's not obvious to me that it's true.
even if I don't know that those things go into building it. So if one values anything...
Oh, sorry, let's take that back. I think he says even if you don't know it.
Bricks and mortar and wiring and concrete that goes into building it, even if I don't know that those things go into building it. So
let's say you value something and okay, let's say there's a glass of water, and the glass of water, okay, no. Let's give a more concrete example. Okay, so I find a hidden I'm like in the desert, I'm lost in the desert, and I find a stash of water. And so, I'm saved. I got enough water. I'm going to be able to make it out of the desert, right? A big stash. Let's say that stash was put there by Reflective Journey. You put it there. You put the stash there. But I don't know that. do I necessarily value you for having put it there? Because if you hadn't put it there, I wouldn't have the water and I would die. So do I necessarily value you for putting it there, even if I don't know that you put it there or that you exist? It seems like he might be committed to saying that. And that seems weird. I don't know. Am I doing analytic philosophy? That sounds like a counterexample. As a thought experiment. Oh no. Don't catch me doing analytic philosophy. But like that is my reaction to that is I don't think you have to value the person that put the water there. And so if there's some precondition or characteristic of a thing that's necessary for the thing, but I'm not aware of it, I don't know that it follows that I necessarily value it, even if I don't know about it. That I don't what how would I value it? What would that mean? That seems like a strange notion of value. Again, I'm open to there being a construal of value in which that would be true, but still seems a little strange to me.
If one values anything, they value themselves as a creature with those 4 characteristics. And
So I don't know that I do. So if you value yourself as a valuer, you value personhood. Okay, so I mean so a person. So okay, so it seems to be like okay, there are these 4 conditions you have to meet in order to value things, and if there are necessary conditions for you to value a thing, then you necessarily have to value the conditions for that are necessary for valuing the things. I don't know if that's true, um, and I think this is going to lead to some moves that I'm going to have some issues with.
if they value a creature with those 4
Let's take it back a little.
I necessarily value the bricks and mortar and wiring and concrete that goes into building it, even if I don't know that those things go into building it. So if one values anything, they value themselves as a creature with those 4 characteristics. And if they value a creature with those 4 characteristics in themselves, they ought to recognize the value of those 4 characteristics in any other person on the planet.
That is where I have a key issue. Okay, so let's go over this again.
Characteristics in the thing. They value themselves as a creature with those 4 characteristics. And
So let's just again grant for the sake of argument that I value myself. You can see in the text on the screen. Let's say I value myself as a valuer. I value myself insofar as okay, so I got to meet these 4 characteristics conditions in order to value things. Okay, so there's 4 conditions I have to meet. I must meet them to value things, and I have to value these characteristics in order to value things in myself. Okay, let's just grant that.
if they value a creature with those 4 characteristics in themselves, they ought to.
Why ought they to? You got an argument for that? He doesn't present an argument. He just says they ought to. I mean, I think he's going to say more after this, but this is where I think the leap comes in. So like the illicit leap. So let's say I value those 4 characteristics in myself. Why would it follow that I must value them in other people? That I don't have to care about these conditions in and of themselves. If they're conditions that are needed for me to achieve my goals, fine. Then I'm like, okay, I might think, okay, so I need these conditions in order to achieve my goals. Okay, but it doesn't mean that I think that the conditions are good in themselves. I think that they're good because they allow me to achieve my goals. They are not my goals. I don't have the goal of having free will. I don't have the goal of having practical rationality. I just need those things in order to get the glass of. So sure, okay, I'm glad I have those things because they allow me to achieve my goals. But that doesn't mean that I think that those things are good simpliciter or something. They're good because I need my feet to walk around. That doesn't mean that I have to care about other people's feet. Like I do. I'm glad other people have their feet and they can get around too. But I don't think that it follows from the fact that I value my feet, that I must value other people's feet because my feet are necessary for me to walk around. And yeah, okay, so their feet are necessary for them to walk around. It doesn't follow that if I value my feet for me to walk around, that I have to value other people's feet for them to walk around. Why would that follow?
Recognize the value of those 4 characteristics.
Sorry, let me bring it back again.
A creature with those 4 characteristics.
So this is where I think some of the language is unhelpful. If you value a creature I value myself with those characteristics. I don't think, well, I'm a creature with the 4 characteristics, and I value having those 4 characteristics. Therefore, it's like good for a creature to have these 4 characteristics. Any creature. No, I don't have to think that. I might think that. I do generally think other people matter, But I'm just saying, like, you're not rationally obligated to think that because you are a creature that has these characteristics, therefore it's good for any creature to have these characteristics. You could just think, yeah, it's good. I'm glad I have them, but it doesn't mean you have to value them in other creatures.
In themselves, they ought to recognize the value of those four characteristics in any other person on the planet or
So he says they ought to recognize the value of those characteristics. Recognizing the value presupposes that they have value. So I value having these characters. Again, we're granting this for the sake of argument. I value having these characteristics, but that doesn't mean that I think they are valuable in and of themselves. And so if someone else values having those characteristics, that doesn't mean I have to value them having those characteristics. That wouldn't follow. I value me having these traits. You value you having those traits. I gave this example to Richard Brown, where it's like, I value my money. I don't value your. I mean, there might be a sense in which I value money. Like we might need it. Like if nobody has money, then money is worthless. But you know, I may value my. Let's go with property then. So I value my land. So let's say I own some land. So it's my land. I get to farm on it. I get to do a barbecue on it. I get to sleep on my land. I get to take a nice nap in the grass. I value my land because I get to use it for the things that make me happy. But I can't use your land. Doesn't make me happy. I can't do anything with it. So I don't value your land. Doesn't do anything for me. Let's say your land is on another planet or in the other side of the world. It's not like you're my neighbor and I have fun with my neighbor or whatever. Your land has no value to me. I can't use it. It doesn't do anything for me. And so it's not that I think, land is valuable because look at all the things I could do with it. And so my land is valuable. And your land is valuable for you. And so your land is also valuable. So I have to value your land. I don't have to value your land. I could just think my land is good and your land sucks. I'm just not obligated to care about other people's goals or interests or values. And so just because I care about my own. I just don't see how that would follow.
they're contradicting themselves. And we know.
Okay, so again, I keep pausing. Like he's saying a lot of stuff, and I have to respond to it. So I'm gonna have to take it back a few times. This is a very dense portion of this, so I'm very sorry about that.
Ought to recognize the value of those four characteristics in any other person on the planet or.
So there's also that reification worry that I had. So recognize the value in other people having those characteristics. I don't know what that means. What do you mean to recognize the value? I think people value things, but I don't think people have value in some respect independent of them valuing things. And I don't think he's demonstrated that people are valuable because they have these traits. Rather, these traits are necessary preconditions for people to achieve their goals. By hypothesis or whatever. Okay, so they're necessary conditions for people to achieve their goals. So what? Okay, yep, let's just grant that. Why would that mean I have to care about other people having these characteristics or acting on their goals or values? Again, I don't know what the argument for that would be. I don't know what the reasoning for that would be. And he's going to say there's a contradiction here, but I don't know what the contradiction is. And this is something I asked Richard Brown. If there's a contradiction here, I'd like to. This is a case where I'd like to see it formalized. Like, what am I committed to? Where there's like, I'm committed to P and not P. What is the specific contradiction? I would like to see what that contradiction is.
Where they're contradicting themselves. And we know.
Just what's the contradiction specifically? Like it's hard to analyze this because it's so unclear what the contradiction is supposed to be. He's not explicitly laying it out. So it might be something like it would be contradictory to think the four conditions are valuable. And then to value them in yourselves, and then another person has the conditions, and then you think they're not valuable. So, imagine if I think this piece of gold is 100 grams, and you're holding a equally sized piece of gold, and I say, well, my piece of gold is 100 grams, but yours isn't. That seems kind of stupid. Assuming it's the same substance, it's going to be the same, and it's the same size or whatever. It would be weird to say mine has a certain amount of a certain property and yours doesn't. It's going to have the same property regardless of who's holding it or whose it is. And so someone might think, if your agency, your free will or whatever is valuable, it'd be ridiculous to say yours is valuable, but another person's isn't valuable. Because if yours has the property value, the valuableness, then another person's is going to have the property valuableness because it's the same thing. But that's not how I see value. I don't see value as a property of things. I see value as it's a verb. It's not a noun. Like I value things. Things don't have value. I could say that they have value, but that doesn't mean that they actually have the property of value or valuableness independent of me valuing them. So like I might, let's say I see someone do a triple backflip. I might say that was cool. I don't think that their action has the property of coolness in and of itself. So like I think that there's something strange going on here where there's a move, there's possibly multiple moves being made that I'm not granting. And I worry that if they were to come to light, I'll go, okay, there's my issue. I don't think the value works that way. People value things. So someone else could value things, but I don't think that makes that person valuable, um, or nor does it mean that I have to value them valuing things, or I have to value whatever they value. So they value their stuff, I value my stuff. I don't have to care about their values.
They're already committed to the principle of non-contradiction, because if they weren't committed to it, they could never get value out of anything at all. You're demonstrating that all persons are valuable and that you ought to believe it, because if you don't,
Yeah. So when did he demonstrate that all persons are valuable? I don't recall that demonstration. So we're going to have to talk about this. For those of you that are still with me, he was here in the chat earlier. So we're going to have to talk about this because I don't know where that's coming from.
believe it, you're contradicting yourself. You're not making an emotional mistake or a mistake of empathy or a mistake of feelings or anything subjective. You're making a factual error. You're failing to recognize that everybody else is just like you in that they are persons too.
So see how are you failing if you don't value them? What? Okay, so I could go, yeah, I recognize other people are persons and that they have these 4 characteristics and they value things. And I don't care about those people and their values or goals or interests. So no, you could recognize that and then just not value them. Um, I don't see what the issue would be, and it's still unclear what the contradiction is.
Kant, this led to a formulation of the categorical imperative that people refer to as the humanity formulation. The categorical imperative just describes what he thought of as the universal, objective moral law that applied categorically to everybody. And the humanity formulation says, act in such a way that you always treat humanity, whether in your own person or the person of any other, never simply as a means, but always at the same time as an end. To clarify a little bit, what does he mean by humanity? Well, just by humanity, one having those characteristics of humans that we described. Doesn't necessarily have to be Homo sapiens sapiens, could be aliens who have those characteristics. If it makes you feel better, just replace humanity with persons. What does it mean to say we never treat other people simply as a means? It means people aren't just instrumentally valuable. They're all intrinsically valuable because they are all the source of their own instrumental value.
So they're all intrinsically valuable because they are the source of their instrumental value. Why would that make them intrinsically valuable? Valuable to whom? Relative to what standard? If the claim is no, in a non-relative way, when did we establish this? Like, I don't recall that being established.
We can never treat other people as if they are just things like cups of water to satisfy our own needs, because as conscious beings who are capable of reflecting, acting, having desires, and acting rationally on those desires, we recognize that that's valuable to us. So,
okay, but I don't recognize that that's valuable to me. I just don't. Like I could. I care about I care about a lot of people, but I don't necessarily like I don't think I'm obligated rationally to care. So this is really what he would need to establish. Not that like because I do happen to care about people, but if a person didn't, it's unclear what factual error they would be making. And I don't think he's shown that they would be making, because they could say, yeah, other people are agents and they have values. And then they could say, and I don't give a shit about them at all. I don't care. And it's unclear what contradiction there would be in doing that.
all persons have to be valuable too, because they all have those characteristics as well. That's the long.
See, why does that make them valuable? With valuable, I'm still unclear what he means by valuable. What does that mean?
Long and short of it, and that's a pretty great conception of a universal moral law, and it's objective as fuck. Brilliant.
Well, that's another thing. I'm not sure this is objective as fuck either. I mean, all of this seems to be grounded in agents having desires in some respect. Isn't that what this is ultimately about? This seems to be like, hey, everybody wants stuff and you want stuff and they want stuff. And so if you want stuff and they want stuff, and it's good for you to want stuff, it's good for them to want stuff, it's good for you to get what you want, it's good for them to get what they want. So you got to care about them or something. Like the whole thing seems to be rooted in desire satisfaction. And so there might be a sort of like second order or like once removed respect or some sort of complicated way in which the whole thing is constructed out of human value in such a way, or person value in such a way that it actually is rooted fundamentally in our stances or our attitudes in certain respects. And maybe it's not even a type of realism. It's not clear to me that this is objective as fuck.
An argument for objective moral value. You can find it in Kant, in the Foundations of the Metaphysics of Morals, the Metaphysics of Morals, the Critique of Practical Reason, the Critique of Pure Reason, and the Anthropology. Or if you want to just go straight to an unbelievably interesting, cool argument that just blew my mind the first time I encountered it, go straight to Korsgaard's books, Sources of Normativity and Creating the Kingdom of Ends. They were published somewhere around 30 years ago. And when I first read them, I was like, this is it. This is right. Because I can't come up with a meaningful objection to them. It makes sense. Anyone who values anything at all says that creatures like them are valuable enough to.
I don't get it. No, I don't. I value things, and it doesn't mean that I think therefore creatures like me are valuable. I just don't agree with that.
Pursue the things they value because they do it. And in doing it makes sense. Anyone who values anything at all says that creatures like them are valuable enough to pursue the things they value because they do it. And in doing
Yeah, I don't say that. And I don't think I'm committed to that.
that, they're demonstrating a commitment to the idea that they're worth it, not because of their particular collection of subjective wants, needs, and desires, but because they're the sort of creature that has wants, needs, and desires, period. So if the water's valuable, you're valuable. And if you're valuable, everybody's valuable.
Yeah, see, I don't see it. Well, how does that follow? So I value water, so I'm valuable? To who? To what end? For what? With respect to what goal? If the idea is no, not with respect to a goal, not relative to, what does that mean? When did we establish that? How does that follow? It feels like key elements of this have not really been argued for. And of course, he could point out like this is a relatively brief presentation, and so maybe there's some unstated premises or ideas that would need to be unpacked further. But okay, well, maybe there are. Maybe we'll end up talking about them. Patrick said this a little bit ago. Lance, personhood also seems to be a property in his argument. Not sure why, but my guess is it's doing some heavy lifting. Yeah, I didn't really carefully examine that, but that might be the case. Patrick goes on, like, I mean, that's a human, so they're a person, but I'm not sure what he means. My guess is it's sneaking some moral talk in. Could be. Reflective Journey says pragmatism doesn't need value to be indexed to the agent, my opinion. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what context that's being asserted in. Reflective Journey says, Lance, I think it's somewhat of conceptual analysis. If you don't take agency to be intrinsically valuable, then the concept becomes contradictory. What concept becomes contradictory? And what's the contradiction? The concept of agency becomes contradictory? What? I don't know what you'd have to unpack this for me because that doesn't sound right to me.
But there are some objections. Before we address those objections, let's make sure we fulfilled Brandon's request. In a universe with more than one person in it, we have a moral law that requires that people treat one another with dignity and respect as the sources of subjective instrumental value. Or wants or desires anything and goes ahead and pursues it and creates value for themselves, they are demonstrating that they value themselves and they value everybody else who's just like them. So let's return to the two examples discussed in Brandon's original video. How and why is murder wrong if God didn't say so? Murder's wrong because the murderer is destroying a person of value, and they're valuable because they actually and or potentially value all sorts of things. By killing them, the murderer is destroying each and every desire that they have or might have that they could fulfill. They're compromising their ability to pursue those desires and reflect on those desires and create projects and fulfill those projects. And they're depriving everybody who has a meaningful, loving, caring, valuable relationship with that person of that relationship. They're eradicating value in the world in the most profound way possible.
Yeah, see, eradicating value. I mean, you're eliminating a person that values things and their ability to act on those values, but you're eliminating value in the world. I mean, again, it seems like value is being treated as this like thing that's real and exists, and that if you killed a person, that you would be destroying value. Uh, are you? You're stopping a person from valuing things. Like, if a person, this seems like it's treating value as a thing and not as an action. And it's certainly true that if you killed a person, you would prevent the actions from occurring. Like they wouldn't be able to go around valuing things. But why would you necessarily have to care about that? What would the contradiction be if you're just like, yeah, so what? I don't care about what that person values. It still seems to me that there's some lurking notion that if a person values things, then like they are valuable, and that maybe that, all those things might be instrumentally valuable, but there's somehow intrinsic value is slipping in here somewhere, and I'm not granting the slippage. I've got like a wax seal and it's not coming through. Yeah, reflective journey is saying you need to buy into Kant's cognitive model of categories of understanding being preconditions for experience. Those categories then become universal for all subjects. This might not be something we could readily address in YouTube comments. It might be too brief. So, hopefully somebody with somebody that is really familiar with this stuff can come and lay it all out for me. I remember reading Kant back at school, and nothing about it struck me as especially compelling. If I'm being honest, it struck me as weird, dubious reasoning, really, really questionable, maybe a bit. Yeah, I just didn't find anything remotely compelling about it. The reasoning just seemed way off to me. And that doesn't seem to be changing, many years later.
And they should know better because they know they value themselves. How do we know they know this? Because even if their only desire is to murder someone, they're capable of attempting to fulfill that desire. There's free. You're also sexual as they would have as violent principle that God. There is no God. Why things slating them wrong, and how and why those wrongs are lawfully wrong. What we don't have or need, God. There is no God legislating this law. The law just exists the same way we would say, ooh, 2 + 2 = 4. If the universe existed and there were 2 rocks and 2 rocks, and those were the only rocks in the universe, we'd say, oh, wow, 2 rocks and 2 rocks, 4 rocks. If those 4 rocks magically disappeared, it wouldn't mean that 2 + 2 no longer = 4. It just would mean that there just didn't happen to be 4 rocks in the universe. If all the people in the universe disappeared, it wouldn't be the case that no longer the moral law applied. There'd be no one to apply it to. But if there's no God, who's going to hold people accountable and punish them for doing wrong things? Well, there doesn't have to be a God around to punish people for saying 2 + 2 = 5. They're failing to understand a principle of math that's universal and objective. People who
Okay. So I don't agree with that either, because, I think math is constructed too. I think those are things that we create. So I don't know that would really follow. And I don't really know if I buy this account. There seems to be assumptions about math that I don't grant. It's interesting because it's like, okay, if there's no God around to punish people, what's going to, okay, well, if you don't do math, well, okay. If you get, in other words, okay, you go around and you do math poorly. Are there consequences for that? Well, yeah, there certainly could be. So if you're trying to build a boat, or you're trying to weigh out food, or you're trying to, to plan for the winter, there are a lot of circumstances where doing math poorly, doing the wrong kind of math, or trying to do the right kind of math and just doing a bad job, there are consequences for doing bad math. What are the consequences for violating the moral law if there's no God. As far as I could tell, there are no consequences. So we'll see what he says here.
Who fail to understand the universal law of morality, that all people are deserving of being treated with dignity and respect, are just making a mistake. The fact that there's no one there to slap their hands with a ruler doesn't mean the law is any less lawful. It's
okay, so there's this law, and then if you violate the law, you're failing to understand something. It seems a little weird to say that, like, so your actions would indicate that you're failing to understand. Is it not possible to say, no, I understand it, I just don't care? If someone says, okay, well, then you're like, I guess the idea would be that you're contradicting yourself or something. So that's the mistake. Well, what if someone says, yeah, I am contradicting myself, I don't care? I mean, I don't think there is a contradiction here, but okay, so then the mistake is, it's a mistake according to the laws of like classical logic. What if they're like, okay, and I don't care about that, I'm cool with this contradiction? Then what? So what? So like, if I have certain goals and values, like I don't value other people's goals and interests, and I want to trample on them, and doing so is somehow a contradiction, well, I think at that point I would say, okay, well, then I'm cool with contradictions. And if you say, but that's a contradiction, yeah, well, then I don't care. Because when I'm acting, what I'm trying to do is achieve my goals and values. And I am not some sort of like puppet to logic. So if logic is in the way of my values, so much for logic. I would just ignore it. And I don't know why anyone else, like why other people wouldn't also do this. Like, why would you comply with logic if it didn't get you what you wanted? Why would you do that? Like, and it's the same with math. The reason I think you should do math well is because it'll get you what you want. Doing bad math isn't going to get you what you want. Same with logic. So I see logic and math as instrumental tools, and their truth is a result of their utility, not vice versa. I think people get it the other way around. Oh, they're useful because they're true. No, they're true because they're useful. So, and this is why I take a pragmatist view on these sorts of things. And it's the same thing with morality. So the type of morality he's describing, this morality without God, is totally toothless. And you could try to graft it on to logic or rationality or something like that, and it's not going to make any difference to me. So violating a moral rule, there's no consequences to that. Saying, but it's irrational to violate this moral rule. Okay, well, if being rational means acting in ways that don't achieve my goals and values, I'm not particularly concerned with being rational then. Then I'm anti-rational. Or if it's illogical, well, then that's a form of logic that I don't care for. I'm not gonna just conform with rules that like my goal is to achieve my goal. Like, sorry, with my goals. I don't know if I have these meta goals. I want to achieve my goals. That's what I'm trying to do. If some philosophical consideration is an impediment to that, so much for the philosophical consideration. That's just a simple way to put it. Patrick says, moral realists often list off the benefits of having moral realism, whether they're right or wrong about those benefits, it's still irrelevant. Yeah. So, and this is one of the biggest issues for me with moral realism is why do people care if moral realism is true? Why would you comply with whatever the moral facts are? So, for me, there's a kind of dilemma here, which is whatever the moral facts turned out to be, either they would be consistent with the goals and values I already have and was already motivated to comply with. So, I'm against torturing people for fun. So let's suppose I found out, hey, it's a stance independent moral fact that you shouldn't torture people with fun. Cool. Didn't want to do that anyway. And I already wasn't doing that. And I'm already on board with stopping people from doing that. So that turns out to be the correct facts. Cool. I would have done that even if they weren't the correct facts. In other words, if you say, well, it turns out anti-realism is true. Okay, well, I'm still against people torturing people just for fun. So whether or not it's a stance independent fact, if it aligns with my values, it makes no practical difference. I wouldn't care. And now let's say it's not aligned with my values. Okay, so it turns out you should say torture people. Say it's a stance independent moral fact that you should torture people for fun. Okay, well then screw morality. I don't want to do that, and I'm not going to. So in other words, if they align with my goals and values, they're superfluous because I would have acted on my goals and values anyway. If they're not aligned with my goals and values, they're superfluous because I would have acted on my goals and values anyway. So it doesn't matter what the substantive content of the stance independent moral facts are. They're either superfluous because they perfectly overlap with my values, so I would have done them anyway, even if they weren't true, or they're misaligned with my values, in which case I'm going to completely ignore them because they're not aligned with my values and I only care about acting on my values. So what is moral realism supposed to do? Why would anyone comply with it? What would be the point? Now, you could, and I don't think you'd be incorrect to say, well, whatever the stance independent moral facts are, I want to comply with those. But that's really weird. It's like outsourcing your value. It's like saying I'll eat whatever the gastronomic, like, it doesn't matter how it tastes to me. It doesn't matter, what my dietary preferences are. This tastes really gross. If it turns out it's a stance independent gastronomic fact that this food is delicious, well, even if when I taste it I'm cringing and vomiting, well, that's what I'm going to eat. That would be a weird way to think about food. Why wouldn't you eat the food, all else being equal, that you enjoyed or that you liked eating or that you thought was gastronomically better? Why would you act on these objective gastronomic properties and values rather than your subjective ones? In other words, I think it's subjectivism all the way down. Like, I just don't think there's any way. I think people have motivations and desires and they act on them. Period. That's what voluntary action is. It's acting on your goals and desires. So if you don't value complying with the stance independent moral facts, it's not only that I would be like, why would you do it? I think you literally can't. You can't do so. I can't do things I don't want to do voluntarily because voluntary action just is doing what I want to do. So if you want a contradiction, there's a contradiction. I can't voluntarily do things that I don't want to do because voluntary action just is doing what I want to do. So I can't want to do things that I don't want to do. That would make any sense. And I don't want to comply with the stance independent moral facts or whatever the moral law turns out to be. I don't care what the moral law is. I don't care. I don't want to comply with it, and I'm not going to. So, if someone says that's irrational, I don't give a shit. If someone says you're contradicting yourself, I don't give a shit. I don't want to do that, and I won't. And if that means burning down rationality and logic, I'll do it. Because what's the alternative? Oh, so you're going to be irrational and illogical? Well, what are the consequences? So yeah. So what's the alternative? I do those things and then I fail at what I want. Why the hell would I do that? So if you're say, oh, so you're insane because you're illogical and irrational. So being a sane person means going, oh, there's all these rules written into the fabric of the universe, and I just have to comply with them because they're the rules. But complying with them makes me miserable and doesn't get me what I want. Why the fuck would I do that? That's insane. So I mean, just imagine you have two options, right? So you're irrational and illogical, and you get out all the things you want, and you're happy, and you think about it at the end of your life, and you're like, yeah, I got what I wanted. Or you're logical and rational, and you're miserable, and you don't achieve your goals. What? So these views that try to break rationality and logic, that try to impose them on us as if we should care about them in ways that are not ultimately subordinated to our goals and desires, I think they're very, very strange. And I don't understand why people find this compelling. I don't find it even a little bit compelling. All right, let's check the chat. Reflective says, yeah, it's difficult to explain. The YouTube comment, I'm not an expert on Kant. Yeah, I'll need to talk to some more Kantians. Barney Mayer said, I think Kantians say you have to value your ability to value things, and that ability can't be undermined if you want to have values at all. Yeah, I'm not sure that it's true that I have to value that I value things. Reflective says, sorry, I keep clearing my throat. Kant's basic insight is that I can commit myself normatively only if I take myself to be committed explicitly. The status is basic for all agents. The respect for this basic status just is. I don't know what that means. I butchered. So Reflective goes on to say, I butchered it. Never mind. Yes, that is a better way to put it. Did someone else say something? Oh, Barney. Yeah. I mean, I'll just have to talk to Kantians more. Superior says, I'm back. I went sledding with my kids. That sounds fun. I haven't gone sledding in a long time. Reflective says, how do you respond to the counter that desires are also mediated by biology, culture, and history? What's that a counter to? I don't deny that. Sapir comes back and says, I don't give a shit. Yeah, I don't give a shit about you sledding. I'm kidding. Reflective says, you're also asserting that desires are just there as a given and we can't further. I'm not saying that. You could certainly ask questions like, well, why do I have those desires? So like, I have a favorite color. I don't think I need to justify that or whatever. Like it's purple, obviously. I mean, everything I have on here is purple. So I have purple light behind me, purple background here. The thing on the bottom is purple. Everything is purple. It's the best color. So like I can further, there's like causal sort, like there's reasons why I like purple, but I don't know what they are. But like, yeah, you could analyze why we have the desires we have, but I don't think you have to desire your desires. And if you did, do you have to desire? This is where that regress comes in. If I have to value being a valuer, do I have to value the fact that I value being a valuer? Do I have to have like meta values and meta values and meta values? If not, why not? Why do you have to value being a valuer, but you don't have to value valuing being a valuer? Like, is it just valueception? Like, and if not, why not? Maybe this is addressed somewhere in the Kant stuff. I don't know if there's more of this video that I wanted to review. There was that free will thing that we I don't know when he gets to that.
It just means the consequences of making a mistake.
So reflective journey says, like, can a desire be of contradictory stuff? Maybe. I mean, I don't know why it would be psychologically impossible for a person to value contradictory stuff. People have contradictory beliefs. So yeah, I think people probably, as a matter of psychological fact, probably do have contradictory desires. This is an interesting suggestion from Sapir. I think you probably like purple because of something about a Ninja Turtle. Well, that can't be the case because my favorite, it's got to be Michelangelo, right? And that's like a yellowy orange. It's orange, right? I'm looking at Michelangelo. Yeah, he's orange. Yeah, some of the images is kind of a yellowy orange. So Michelangelo is my favorite. And that's like the yellow one. So let me see if I can get him. Michelangelo, orange nunchucks. Donatello is purple and uses a bow, like a staff. Leonardo, blue, uses like two katanas or swords or something. And then Raphael is red and has size. I think I got it right. It's kind of like the 4 Galilean moons. So Pierce said, yeah, yes, LOL. Of course, you'd steal my favorite Ninja Turtle. So Michelangelo is your favorite. I don't remember why Michelangelo is my favorite. Is Michelangelo the ones that's like extra obsessed with pizza? Who's the one? Isn't there one that's like super into pizza? Maybe that's why. Maybe it goes all the way back to my love of food because they really love pizza, and I really identified with that as a kid. I was like, hell yeah, pizza's awesome. It's like the best thing. I don't know that it is the best thing. So, what is the best food? In the chat, tell me what the best food is. I got 32 people here. You could tell me. This is getting real silly because it's getting late, and when I do these streams late, I get increasingly fatigue silly. Reflective Journey says, I can understand that implicitly you could desire contradictory things, but when that is made explicit, you need to choose one since you can only act on any side of it. That might be true. Yeah, I mean, obviously you can't simultaneously act on contradictory desires. I don't know that a whole lot follows from that. I don't think you're going to get Kantian stuff out of it. Patrick says it's morally wrong to stab spaghetti before cooking. I don't think so.
Don't involve a punishment. So we've dismantled the core syllogism at the heart of Brandon's moral argument for the existence of God by showing how a moral law could exist without God at all. And the argument we've given for the moral law is far more rationally justifiable than any argument he's ever seen, heard, thought of, or given for the existence of a particular conception of God and the moral law that that particular conception of God would legislate. And that brings us to the objections I imagine you all will have. Objection number.
Yeah, I didn't really find these might be accurate types of objections he could anticipate that people would give, but I'm not too interested in. So I'll skip ahead to the free will one, and then I think that'll be it for the video. So basically, people raise bad objections, and there's nothing wrong with dismantling those. All right.
Reasonable. Another video. 3. What about the objection that free will doesn't exist? It's a good objection. The fact is, there is no remotely reasonable, robust, thoughtful, metaphysical account of how free will could work in the world. But I don't think we need that account. If you're watching this, you're likely familiar with some of the arguments that the presuppositional apologists make when they want to say, oh, if you don't believe in God, you can't believe in anything. You can't trust anything. But arguing that free will doesn't exist because you can't have a thoroughgoing materialist or naturalist explanation of how it works is sort of the same argument. Because the same way I say to the apologist, I just do trust what I believe a lot of the time. Whether or not we have some robust metaphysical account of how free will works, we all act as if we're free all the time. And if you say no.
So this is what's puzzling. What does it mean to act like you're free? What would I act like if I didn't think I was free? He's going to give some examples, and I don't find them very convincing.
No, I don't. You're full of shit. Because if I give you a menu with 1,000 things that will works, we all act as if we're free all the time, everywhere. And if you say, no, I don't, you're full of shit. Because if I give you a menu with 1,000 things on it, you're not going to just be like, read it and be like, oh yeah, number 73. No, you deliberate, you think about it. When I ask you to put together the coolest Spotify playlist for a road trip, you don't just say, oh, I'm programmed to need this song, this song, this song, this song. You think about it and deliberate and act.
Yeah. So how does that show that you act like you have free will? Not believing in free will doesn't mean you think people don't deliberate or make choices. That's free will isn't the ability to deliberate or make choices. It's that, philosophers can't get clear on what the hell they're even talking about, but free will is typically taken to be something like the set of agentic capacities that are a necessary condition for praise and blame and desert-based moral responsibility, something like that. And I could certainly say I don't have that, but I make choices, I deliberate. So I don't take that to be acting like I have free will. And not thinking that thinking you don't have free will doesn't mean that you just wait for stuff to happen. It doesn't entail fatalism. It wouldn't commit you to acting like things should just happen, whether or not you are actively involved in bringing those things about. So look, let's say I don't believe in free will. It doesn't mean that I think that whether or not this cup is going to be drank from I'm not involved in that. I have to pick the cup up. I have to choose to do that. I have to choose to take a sip. But the ability to make choices isn't free will, because someone could say, yeah, you're determined to make those choices, and I reject compatibilism. And I don't think you have free will, but that doesn't choices would just fit into that causally determined schema of the universe in which agents don't have any kind of ability to, they don't have the requisite capacities to be subject to praise and blame or desert-based moral responsibility, but they do make choices. So yeah, I don't think any of this shows that people act like they have free will. You'd have to be very clear about what you mean by free will. But I think it would end up being a very watery notion of free will that wouldn't have much meat on the bones.
So on completely pragmatic grounds, we all necessarily act as if we're free, and that psychological freedom is more than enough to get this moral law off the ground, because
yeah. So I just deny this. I don't think people act like they're free. You'd have to get clear on what that means, but I think on most construals would probably reject it.
Recognize we act as if we're free, and everybody else acts as if they're free as well. Yeah, but what about like a Nietzsche-flavored objection that this is all just some kind of social construct and really we can transcend it and there's no objective universal moral law? Or the egoist objection that people are just all out for their own self-interest in some way. Well, if I found Nietzsche's syphilitic, old, tired, pathetic ass on one of his long walks and just beat the hell out of him, and if I said my beating the hell out of him brought me a tremendous amount of satisfaction, in a million years, he wouldn't be saying, sehr gut, Übermensch. There's nothing wrong with what you're doing. I just strongly prefer you not do it. He would recognize that there was something wrong with it.
This is strange. So you can think things are wrong as an anti-realist, So what point is he trying to make here? I don't know what the point is. Also, it really sounds like I don't know if he's just joking around, but it really sounds like he hates Nietzsche, and I don't. I don't know what the problem with that would be. Uh, it's funny because I asked for best food, so let's take a look at what people said. So Sapir says the best food is fundamental particles arranged the best food wise. That doesn't help me. I'm actually curious what food people like. Uh, and Reflective Journey says, one moment. Man, I'm really having camera issues. Okay. Reflective Journey says, aloo paratha, Indian food for me. I love that you put in Indian food with the expectation that I don't know what paratha is. Not only do I love paratha, I've made paratha myself. So, and I got the photos to prove it. I took some photos. Ugh, got the camera fixed. So I make paratha. I really love it. I don't know what the why everyone's so into naan, because I think paratha is better. I've described it as like a croissant naan because I like the lamination and the layers in it. Stupid camera. So I really, really, really love paratha. I haven't made it in a long time, so maybe that's something to go make again. What's the last thing that we made? Oh, the last thing I made was what's it called? That sounds like it's such a stupid name. I have to double check. Is it really called a Dutch? I mean, a Dutch baby. That was super easy. That's one of the easiest things I've ever made. Put stuff in a blender, throw it in a pan, stick it in the oven, done. It was very easy. But paratha's great. Not my favorite food though, but it is good. All right. Is that it? Let's see if there's anything else.
One last question that a lot of people have. Isn't this just the golden rule? Well, there's one important difference.
Yeah, no, that's it. Yep. So that's all I wanted to review from this video. So we'll bump that out. And let's see. Patrick says, oh, we're allowed to nominate Indian food, Peshwari naan. I don't know what is specifically that. Let me look that up. What's looking up Peshwari naan, sweet variation. Coconut. Oh, I've had that before. Yeah, coconut, almonds, and raisins. Yeah. Okay, I've had that before. That's good. Yeah, where did I have that? Like I've had like the stuffed ones. There's a really good one I got that was what was it? It was like potatoes and then some type of some like leaf green, like some green vegetable I didn't recognize. I don't remember what it was, but it was really good. I don't know why that was so good. Like potatoes, that wouldn't be my go-to. Was like, yeah, take bread, put potatoes in it. That's gonna be great. It's freaking awesome. Where did I used to get that? Where did I get that? There was a specific place I always got that at, and I can't remember where I got it. Damn. I moved around too much. I lost track of where I used to get that. That sucks. All right. I can't remember. Barney Mayerson says the channel Carefree Wandering has a good video on Nietzsche's critique of Kant's ethics. Could make a good video review. Yeah, I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. So if you want to see my stupid commentary, my ignorant, dumb commentary, then you might get that from me. But I get a little embarrassed about that stuff. If it's not psychology and meta ethics, I get real itchy about whether I could really cover it effectively. Sapir says, I really like Manwich sloppy Joe sauce, but maybe that's weird. That is a little weird. I don't hate it. It's fine. But if someone was like list off good foods, it wouldn't be my go-to for good food, but it's fine. I like butter basted steak. Okay. All right. I want to hear a little bit more about what food people like. I really got to do something food related. I got to do it. I thought about doing something food related for YouTube at some point, and I might get around to it. So my favorite stuff is baking related, and I'd mentioned my favorite dessert is kanafa, but that it's very hard to get the ingredients for that unless I like make my own cheese or something, um, which I've done that before. So yeah, I'm trying to think what else that I like. I like some like desserts that are I don't know how to say. Is it galab jamun? And then one of the more recent ones I made. I'm gonna look up the name because I can never remember the name. Gajar ka halwa. So I made this for my Christmas dinner as our dessert. It's like a carrot pudding, carrots and cardamom, and it takes a while to cook it. The recipe I had made it seem like it was going to be really quick, and it was not quick. So that turned out really great. So I like that. I don't know if you've had that before. Why is there so much Indian food in this discussion? Well, I like Indian food, but I like so many other kinds of food too. Yeah, Sapir says I like American Southern food like country fried steak and fried okra. I love fried okra. I haven't had it in a long time, but yeah, I really, really love Southern food. And my this is gonna sound stupid, but my favorite Southern food is just biscuits, just buttermilk biscuits. I just love a plain old biscuit. Um, yeah, I know there's like often quite a few vegans around, so I don't know what like a vegan buttermilk biscuit would look like. I'm sure you could pull it off. Um, but just love biscuits, just a plain biscuit. I don't even need anything on it. I also love beignets. Those are really good. Uh, it's just basic. I love anything fried or southern stuff that's like covered in anything greasy and fatty and unhealthy. I'm gonna like it. Oh, yeah, I know lomo saltado. Um, so I've had a whole bunch of lomo saltado at different places. So that's a good one. Mighty Sarlacc. Well, you're talking about meta ethics. We're talking about food right now. But so Mighty Sarlacc says, I guess I'm agnostic on morality. I don't take a position on. Sorry, I think that got cut off. I don't take a position on. So Sarlacc says, I guess I'm agnostic on morality. I don't take a position on if it's relative or not. Fair enough. That's fine. All right, we got a few more. So, but we got Peruvian food up in here. Yeah, Peruvian food is great and underappreciated. So I like a lot of Peruvian stuff. I there's so many good things to talk about. I'll have to talk about Brazilian food sometime. So it's just such a cool mix of there's like German, Italian, Portuguese, and African and indigenous stuff have all been mixed in various ways, and it's resulted in some of the coolest and most interesting food. And there's a lot of regional differences in the kind of food in Brazil. And so far, I've loved everything everywhere. It's just one of the most interesting culinary. Like there's a lot of variation in the types of food, and just everywhere I go, I'm like, this is totally different, and I also love it. So Brazil is I think very underrated for how good their food is. So just about everything they make is awesome. So so first of all, just the coffee everywhere is going to be better than the U.S. But I go to random places and you get the I can't remember the name of the bread. It's just the plain Portuguese bread, like little bread rolls. And they're just awesome. Just any bread anywhere there is going to be good. And they make these cool little cookies, these like crumbly cookies that dissolve. They're great. I like the stuff with, they make a lot of stuff with tapioca, and that's great. Pretty much anything with yuca is going to be good. Uh, they have so many indigenous like vegetables, like fruits and vegetables that you could use, and that have manjaquinho. That's really good. And then they got some of my favorite desserts like kinjin. So like the cakes there are extraordinary. So it's not just a bunch of buttercream icing. So they do layers in the cakes, and it's like fruits and jams, and cakes will have multiple layers, and they'll be full of fillings. Uh, they're just awesome. Yeah. So just the cakes are good. All the baked stuff is good. The snacks are good. The coffee's good. The entrees are good. Just everything's good. They do these things called cheese. It's like a big, like I think of it as a giant panini burger. So you can get these big burgers, and they're not. It's not like it doesn't have to be beef. You can put whatever you want in it. So basically, a big old thing, put whatever you want in it, and it's like a big flattened discs of bread, and just anything you want in there. But they put a lot of like they'll put the garlic sauce is really common and stuff there. If you get a hot dog or a burger or sandwich, you get this like garlicky sauce, and they put those little potato sticks, like little fried potato sticks, and they'll often be like peas and corn for some reason. Like they'll just be random vegetables, but they're often when they're all mixed in the sauce, it like adds texture and oomph to the food there. But yeah, it's good stuff. It's a lot of, I know maybe that doesn't sound exciting, but if I showed you some cheese, you'd be like, oh, that looks good. Yeah. So Oh yeah, dim sum. I was just looking for a dim sum place around here, and there aren't any around here. And we found one, and it looks like it's closed because they didn't answer the phone. We kept calling. We're like, because I'm not driving an hour to go to a dim sum place if I don't know if it's going to be open. But yeah, dim sum is great. Actually didn't have dim sum for the first time until 3 or 4 years ago, and I was obsessed with it. And I went to the place like 3 or 4 times. Did I go 3 or 4 times? I don't know. I went a few times. Sapir says my stepmom is Venezuelan and she makes a bunch of good food, but I don't know what any of it is called except delicious. Yeah, I don't know enough specifically about Venezuelan food to comment. Uh, so I know some of the Brazilian stuff, some of the Peruvian stuff, maybe a little bit. So yeah, so I grew up in South Florida, so I grew up with a love of a lot of the stuff you could get down there. So my favorite thing there is a medianoche. So as far as I know, it's just a Cuban sandwich. It's made with a different bread. It's like this yellow bread that is like slightly sweet. I don't even know what the bread is called. And it's just a midnight. It's medianoche. It's just a midnight sandwich. So I used to back in when I was young. I used to go to like Cuban restaurants that'd be open real late and get coffee. I used to be able to drink coffee and then go to sleep. Now I think if I drink coffee now, I would be bouncing off the walls and feel sick tomorrow. But um, so yeah, I used to get those sandwiches and have some coffee. What did they serve? Yeah, I don't know. Just there was so much good stuff at those places. Little guava and cheese pastries. Used to love those. I miss a lot of that stuff. I miss a Cafe con Leche. They had just made better coffee. If you went, it'd be worth it to go down to Miami and get some awesome coffee. So I really, really miss that. I miss all the great restaurants there and just a lot of good food. But it's not just the Cuban food. There's restaurants from, every South American country is represented there. So, I mean, I don't know about all of them, but there's a lot of them. So, and I miss that. I miss that. All right. So I think that's it for me. All right. So what is the name of the channel? It's such an interesting and weird name, Philosopfunculist. So I hope my review was friendly enough that you're going to want to continue to have a conversation with me in the future. So I hope we could set that up. I don't know. Yeah, if there's more for me to review or whatever, maybe I'll do that. But hopefully we just have a conversation. I think that's it for me. I think I've had enough for the night. I think I'm pretty tired. But yeah, you should see the moral luck video. I think maybe I'll set that for coming out tomorrow. We'll see. Yeah, tomorrow. Let me go set that now. All right, I'll do that after this video is over. All right, everybody. Thanks everybody for being here. I know this is more a laid back stream, so some people that if they're watching this video for the first time or whatever, they're going to be like, "What the hell is this guy? What is the point of this?" He just talks to the audience, mentions food, and then kind of rants about some video, and then goes back to talking about food. Okay, yeah, whatever. We get to talk about what we want. All right, everybody. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate all of you. I love how interactive you are. It really makes this all right, this is gonna sound stupid, but it makes me feel less lonely. Like I don't get out much to hang out with people. So it's cool to be able to talk to people. So I appreciate it. So thanks everybody. All right. So, oh yeah, and like the video and comment. You're apparently supposed to say all that stuff. Maybe I have to pause the video every 20 minutes and say, yo, if you haven't liked the video already, like the video. And I know people throw those little polls in the chat where they're like, have you liked the video yet? Should I do that? Or would that be just annoying? Because I find it annoying when people do that because I have to like click, no, I didn't like your video. I'm not going to now because you put an annoying poll in here. And I have to close the poll because you hit no and then it still shoves the poll in your face. I want to see the chat. Get the freaking poll out of my face. So I don't know if I should do that because it's annoying. I'm annoyed by it. So why wouldn't you be annoyed by it? So I don't think I want to do that. So maybe I'm not doing all the things you need to do to bump yourself up in the views. If I wanted to do that, if I wanted to play by the rules of the system, I'd be doing these shorter videos and constantly telling people to like and subscribe. I don't want to do all that crap. I think it's annoying. I wish different types of content could be boosted. I think what I'm doing here is pretty cool, but I don't know. Maybe this is a good idea, Patrick. Maybe a pop-up on screen. Yeah, okay, that wouldn't be too intrusive. I'll ask next time. I'm too tired now. I got to get to sleep, but I'll ask for feedback. Maybe I'll throw it in the community section, but maybe that will just have self-selection effects for people that are especially enthusiastic about my stuff. So I'll have to do it in a stream. I'll just have to ask people, what kind of stuff are you cool with me doing? So, having a little pop-ups on the screen, like and subscribe. I am going to do that closing video. So I'll get to that now. So yeah, do all the stuff, like the video, comment, subscribe, all this, it's just the stuff. All right. I check out the links in the description. So you got a link to the original video. You could watch this whole video that I reviewed as part of it in its I guess I reviewed most of it. Yeah, it's not a super long video, but you could go check out the channel because it's a cool channel. So go check out that channel and then check out my Linktree link, which is a link to a bunch of links. It's very meta. So with that being said, thanks everybody for being here, and I will see y'all later. And yeah, see you next time. Take care.